Hey guys, and welcome back to the Indie Game Culture Podcast. It's episode 7. We're getting a lot of these going now. I am Callum, this is Melika, this is JT, and we are back again to discuss indies on the radar, indies we've been playing, and a big old discussion. But before all that, I want to be really annoying and do a little bit of admin at the top of the podcast. We've been saying all this stuff at the back end, but I feel like you might have missed it, so I'm going to be really annoying for about 30 seconds. Did you know we have a website? It is called the Indie Game Culture website, www.indiegameculture.com. We do reviews, we do listicles, we do interviews, we do all kinds of stuff. It's really good. If you like this podcast, you will like the website, and you should bookmark it. Also, we are putting together a new newsletter. So if you're on that website, give us your email, and we will spam you with stuff about indie games. Win-win. Also, we have socials. We have some nice TikToks that you can enjoy. We have a YouTube, we have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have all of them. And as well as that, please tell your friends. If you're listening to this indie podcast and you really like it and you really like indie games, tell your indie game friends that this exists and they will love it as well.
True.
But I speak sense, I speak the truth. Occasionally. But that is all I wanted to chat about. I have told you all of my nonsense, and now we're going to tell you about some gaming-related nonsense. How have you all been?
Tired, busy. I've had a very busy couple of weeks. Like, I was supposed to go to a convention next week, and the one guest I was going for cancelled, yesterday. So now I'm desperately trying to rearrange all my accommodation and travel and stuff, and it's a nightmare. Plus I've had work stuff to do. I've been climbing a lot. I've had real life stuff. It was my husband's graduation yesterday, so I've been uncharacteristically busy. I miss my days to just lounging around watching TV. Those were the good days.
You have to name drop them. Who let you down?
Who let me down? I'm not gonna blame him. You know, life stuff comes up. I don't want to name and shame, but hopefully I might get to see him later in the year, so we'll have to wait and see.
Okay, well, we'll wait until then. But I'm glad to hear that you were keeping busy and not living the sedentary life, which is very much what I've been doing.
You should see my muscles. I've got huge biceps now from all the climbing I've been doing. It's incredible. Awesome. Every time I look, I'm like, where did these come from? They never used to exist. It's so crazy.
That's awesome. Stay hench. You know?
Absolutely. None of the rest of me is muscly, but my biceps, they're coming along.
Nice. What about you, JT? Keeping busy?
Nothing too new to report. Just more streaming stuff, which is good. Made some new VTuber friends that I was super stoked for. And I never understood the appeal of playing with dolls, as strange as it might sound, but there's a thing called VTuber Studio that lets you have your model and everybody else's models together, and there's a bit where everyone's models they look really good, so it's you're playing with I don't know, several $1,000 worth of art with your hands, and you can move people's models around. I was like, oh, that was fun. And that's, I guess, it's a small thing to report, but I was excited for making some friends through that, and I've just been pretty active biking, riding, and having myself a good old time.
Wicked.
Yeah.
You've all been so active, and I've done.
What about you, Cal?
I've literally done nothing.
That's not true. You've done something. Come on.
I've been very sedentary in the house, just doing non-active things. But I suppose I got a new trick on my skateboard because I'm 14 years old.
What trick did you learn, Cal?
I done a tray flip off of a raised platform. Does that make sense?
That sounds really
What does that look like? Describe it to us.
Hold on. I can add the visual aspect to the audio podcast again like last time.
Please do.
I used to love Tony Hawk's when I was a kid, playing on that. I didn't have very many games back then as well, but I would spend so much time on Tony Hawk's that even though I don't ride a skateboard myself, but I briefly rode one as a kid, which would take to the park sometimes, and I was useless at it, but it was still fun. Just woo, I'm moving without really doing anything. It was so exciting.
I mean, if you're having fun, you're doing it right.
Yeah, because our mum didn't want us going too far, so I'd literally just skateboard up and down the road outside our house. Just completely flat surface, but it was great. And occasionally we get to go to the skate park, and I wasn't allowed to ride my skateboard on the skate ramp because I thought it was dangerous, but I was allowed to run up and down it. So
there you go.
I mean, whatever works. You keep busy. I've posted it in so you can have a look at it if you want.
Wonderful.
Oh. Here we go.
That's me doing a big old trick.
Show all our viewers here.
going on.
Oh.
It's like used magic to make the skateboard spin. It was beautiful.
I do my best.
How long did it take you to learn it?
Oh, that looks
Well, I've been
good.
working on that one properly for about 2 years, like, so it's been a long time coming. But
Oh, that's wicked. I love it.
yeah, that was kind of like the trick I wanted to do as a kid, and then I got back into it as an adult, and I was like, if I can ever do that, I feel like I've completed it. So anything else is a bonus from now on.
I love that for you.
Yeah, but outside of that, it's just been games. But that bodes
That's
well.
honestly, that's what we're about. That's what we're about.
Well, speaking of, that will bring us quite nicely into our first section. You know it, we know it. It is indie that we have been playing. We've been playing some games. We're going to tell you about them. Does anyone want to jump in, or will I, or what will we do?
You choose, Callum.
Yeah.
I'll go first. I never go first, do I? Cool. So I'll get the boring ones out of the way first. Well, I say boring. Ones that are less interesting in terms of like being trendy right now. So off the back of our conversation last week, as I am an impressionable person, I've said this before, we talk about it, I go and play it. I went back and I started, like, I'm only giving it like half an hour to an hour, like maybe before bed or something, just to gradually just work through it and chip away at it. I started Disco Elysium again, and I'm playing it through.
Yes.
I knew JT was gonna get hyped by that.
Yeah, I'm playing it through, and I played it. I think I've only really played it through in total once, and I've done it as like a more like methodical thinker type. I'm now playing it as a really bombastic physical character.
That's the best playthrough. All right, Callum.
Yeah, I'm really embracing my Hobocop this time around, and it's quite interesting. Every answer is punch.
Yes, that makes me so glad.
Yeah, it's pretty good fun. I've had decent luck every time I've tried to punch something. Like, it's pretty much came off, so it's been pretty good. But yeah, that was the kind of, I say boring. It's very, very fun, and it's a very brilliant game. But I've played it through, and I know it back to front, so I'll not give it too much time. The new ones that I've been playing, they're all pretty much new and interesting. The first one is kind of a two-parter because I played Oxenfree in full, so I could get the taste for it, so I could play Oxenfree 2 Lost Signals.
Yeah, because that's just come out, right?
Yeah, it has indeed. So for those that don't know, Oxenfree and Oxenfree 2 are made by Night School Studios, who are like the only competent, like only traditional studio owned by Netflix. So
I don't know Netflix owns them.
Yes, Netflix have a gaming streaming service, but it's very limited in its scope. But the one thing that's came out of it has been Night School Studios. They've been kind of the only traditional studio they have. And the thing that's kind of cool about it is if you have Netflix, you can play Oxenfree 2 Lost Signals via mobile if you have Netflix, because it's a game that's so limited in its kind of its mechanics that you can just play on a mobile and you don't really lose anything out of it because you're essentially just picking dialogue.
That's
and
really interesting.
walking.
So, like, do you like log into your Netflix account like on the game page or something?
See, I don't know because I just bought it like traditionally, but as far as I know, if you have, I don't know if you have to have like the Netflix streaming service, like the game streaming service. I don't know if it's an extra, but if it is, then you need to have that and then you get to play it. But I mean, it's just an added thing that I thought was somewhat interesting.
I haven't been able to use Netflix since they stopped that stupid password sharing thing. It makes me very angry because I shared it with my friend and he was the main account holder, so now I can't use Netflix.
Yeah, and Ella couldn't live without it, so we had to get it again. So I'm finally paying out of pocket, which sucks.
I'm like a side on this. I can't use it anymore because of the like you can't be in the same. You're not in the same household. You can't use it.
Yeah, I'm very angry about it. I'm trying to convince my friend to use a VPN to like so we can spoof that we've both got the same IP, but it's just he hasn't responded.
That'd be very tricky to do though.
Apparently, it's not actually that hard. You can like because you can set up like a VPN that you share with your friends, and then it will spoof you both to the same IP address, which is what I want to do with my TV, so I can watch Netflix. I need a breakfast show. I've been rewatching New Girl, but I was rewatching Superstore, and it's just I don't like change.
Well, if you can work that out, that'd be good. But on the subject of Oxenfree and Oxenfree 2, so I played that one through, and I really loved Oxenfree. I thought it was, I'd say it's one of my favorite kind of indie narrative-based games, kind of those walking simulator types of games, and it had a real horror vibe to it as well. It had that Stranger Things kind of drama, teen boppy drama to it. There were so many layers. It was great. Oxenfree 2 Lost Signals tries something a little bit different. It goes for the same like format. It's very, very much the same. The only difference is you now have a walkie-talkie and a radio, so you can talk to people while them not being physically there. So it adds a few more characters that you don't meet in person, and it adds a bit more to it. But I felt like it was just filler, to be honest. Like it didn't really add anything for me.
You don't seem that enthused about it.
I liked it. I thought it was okay. It's definitely not as good as the first one. The main thing that I took away from it is they tried to do like a more adult storyline, and I don't think it came off that well. And the
Adult in what way?
Just in the sense that there were adult characters instead of teen characters, and it really was anchored by two characters rather than this group of 5 or 6 that there was last time. So it really relied on these two to be strong characters, and in their defense, they are. The lead characters, Jacob and Riley, are very, very good. It's just everything around them kind of sucks. So the world isn't as interesting. It isn't as eerie and mysterious as the island that you were on last time. The kind of the plot and storyline, it feels like it's just plodding along for them to talk more, because they're the interesting part. Everything else is just kind of superficial up until the end. And there is a bit where the first game kind of conjoins with the second, and it becomes somewhat interesting in the sense that, you get to find out what happens to the people from before. But if you come to it as a standalone experience, you're going to miss all of that. So there's just a lot of things that I could pick holes in it all day, really, but it was still good. It was still a competently made game and a competent story. It just was nowhere near as good as the first one.
That must have been quite disappointing, because I know you're really looking forward to it as well.
Yeah, I was really excited to see if they could like just do more of the same, because the thing is, because the game was so simplistic in its mechanics, they didn't actually have a lot to do. All they had to do was write an amazing story again. That was all they really had to do, because everything else kind of takes care of itself. You just had dialogue that you pick along the way, and that's essentially it. Everything else you done was just walking around, getting the occasional collectible. That was it. So
I do like collectibles. What kind of collectibles were they?
They're letters that you pick up from the person from the previous game that was important.
And they stand on the lore.
A little bit, yeah.
All right.
I love that kind of thing.
I still don't really know too much about the game's like premise and everything, but it sounds
So
like
the
it's
premise-
creepy and surreal.
It's creepy. It's more surreal, this one, than it is creepy. The first one was much more horror-filled, and it was much better. But the second one is a little bit more surreal and sci-fi, but it has the same premise in the sense that you open up inadvertently these realms to another dimension where these souls have been trapped from this old naval ship, the USS Kanaloa. These people sunk in like the 1920s or whatever of the First World War, I think it was. And basically they're trapped in this like other state of being, and they can't die and they can't come back. And through radio waves, they can communicate with the other side, and they're trying to escape, and that's where the horror side of it comes from. So yeah, and basically you open up these time rifts so they can kind of pop you into the past and the future, and there's all kinds of stuff going on.
That does sound cool.
It is very, very cool. And the first and the second one are kind of blended together in quite a nice way. If you've played both of them, you'll probably get something out of it. If you come to the second one expecting it to blow your mind and be a standalone experience, you'd probably be quite disappointed, because the first one is leaps and bounds better. So yeah, that was Oxenfree. A little bit disappointing, but it was still probably worth the price of admission, I would say.
Yeah.
I think it's only like 13 quid. It's a decent game for that. And then I decided I need to well, no, actually, I played a VR game before I did that. So this was a cool one. I don't know if you would call this indie, but like I say, pretty much every VR game.
So you're saying that they all are, basically.
In a sense, they kind of are, so I'm going to allow myself. So there's a game called Synapse, which is like a roguelike shooter. But the real gimmick of this game, and the thing that makes it interesting, because the storyline is not interesting,
I
And the
love
game,
the colors.
oh yeah, it's got a monochrome kind of color scheme, but it has pops of color for all of like the points of interest. So it's quite cool that way. Very stylized, and it use that kind of fractal portals. Do you know how like in like Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, you could go through a portal into another dimension that just kind of happens seamlessly? It has a little bit of that going on as well. But the main thing about it that is fantastic is the telekinesis powers.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
It made me feel like Magneto from X-Men, where you could just pick up.
Do you
things.
have the hand like gloves for your VR as well?
No. The way that they handle it is because of the haptic feedback and the triggers, you can crush things to the extent that you need to. So let's say it's a flammable flame barrel. You can pick that up, and if you do it gently, it doesn't explode. If you crush it in your hand, it explodes.
Oh my
Oh,
god,
that's
that's
cool.
really cool. I like that.
Yeah, I've been seeing a friend play through Control, which kind of looks like that in the sense of like you have these kind of telekinetic powers. Is it kind of like in that same vein?
Well, I would say that Control is a lot more all-encompassing. What this is essentially, it's kind of similar to things like the Light Brigade's another VR game where it's like a roguelike shooter, and you just kind of take out waves of enemies and move. The concept is you're going into the mind of this commander, and you have to get into his subconscious, and you get through waves and waves and waves of his subconscious until you get to him, and you can interrogate him because he's in a coma. And it's like a military ops sort of thing. It is all very cliche and bare bones in terms of story, but I mean, it serves a purpose to get you playing the roguelike. In terms of the actual roguelike, I thought it was a little bit limited because of, I think more than anything, the art style, because it is monochrome and grayscale, the levels just kind of blend into each other, and it's very hard for them to diversify. And the enemies, for the most part, the AI is not like, they give the impression that it's very like special ops because they have these people constantly shouting, flanking, moving left, all of the technical speak, but they just stand there and let you for the most part. So it's very much aiming for that and not succeeding. But the thing that made it actually enjoyable, because I walked away from it going, there's a lot of this that I really shouldn't like, but just because of this one thing, I really do, and it's the telekinesis powers. Like, they were just so fun. It was essentially like having the Force in Star Wars, but point of view, like properly using it. And it did come off sort of cartoonish at times. Like, there were moments where you're just kind of hiding behind cover, and you have this like metal cube, and you're just kind of just going like this and bashing someone over the head.
Oh gosh.
So it's kind of like a toy mallet, just kind of doing that to get them. And it felt a bit silly at times, but whenever it really works, you feel like a proper badass. So that was a cool one. If you have a VR, it's actually one of the very few PSVR 2 exclusives. So if you have one of those consoles, I would give that a try. If it goes on sale, I wouldn't pay full price for it because you will not get value from it.
How much is it full price?
I think it's like 30 something.
30?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's not great value because in terms of the roguelike, there's not a lot of replay value to it. Once you're through it, there's no real reason to go back to it. It's not a good roguelike in that sense. So you'll probably not only get a good one, maybe 2 runs out of it, because they do add difficulty levels afterward. I wasn't interested to do it a second time, but maybe someone else will get a kick out of it.
What kind of price do you think would have been fair?
Half that.
Oh.
Half.
Yeah. Wait until it is on sale and then give it a bash. And then the big one that I spent probably the most time on is a game called Sable.
Yes, I saw you got the platinum for that.
I did. I said to you guys, I have never came to this podcast without at least one platinum to show, and I literally got it today. So it was very much
done.
At the buzzer, that one. But I got it. I got it. I have a lot of things to say about Sable because I would kind of describe it as a Breath of the Wild without stakes. Like, there's no combat, there's no stress involved. And whereas with Breath of the Wild, there's a lot of like, you have to get to know the systems and you have to engage in combat, and there's a lot of things you have to learn. Sable is very much taking away all of that and just giving you the exploration side of it and a bit of the platforming and the kind of climbing with the stamina bar. And that's about it, really. Everything else is doing quests, exploring the world, and you're never really given a marker in terms of this is where you go, or this is where everything is, and you get map markers. You essentially have to discover all of this for yourself, and I like that it was very, well, not to the extent of Outer Wilds, but it kind of gave me that feel of just push you off and you're on your own, do what you do. So I liked that. It was very nice in that regard, but there are a lot of negatives I have about this one, and they are all mainly performance based, which is
really. That's
so
quite surprising. It's been out for a while, right?
yeah, and you know what? I seen it got rave reviews, and
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, because I very nearly played the demo for it because it came out as part of the Idea Xbox, but there were like 40 games, so I didn't get around to it. But like during I religiously watch all the Xbox showcases, and it's had like a lot of coverage from that, and like everyone's saying how great it is and stuff. So that's surprising to hear they haven't patched out any performance issues, to be honest.
Yeah, like there's so many things that they could do to give it better performance issues and quality of life fixes, but the biggest one, this game has this stylized kind of 20 frames per second approach to the art style. Think Miles Morales in that kind of way.
Deliberate?
Like, it's deliberate. So do you know how Miles Morales has that kind of choppy, kind of slowed down?
I don't appreciate that in that either.
I'm on the other side of it. I actually do like that, but whenever it's done very well. But if you have frame rate issues in the game where you're going for a very dramatic frame rate, that is very bad.
Yeah.
Wow.
And this game just had really, really choppy frame rates. What I noticed about it, which is something I've never really encountered in a game since like the PS3 era, where as you played games, your save file will get bigger and bigger and bigger, and it would run slower and slower and slower. It's not something I've encountered since then. But this game, as you kept playing, the game would get choppier and choppier and choppier, and then you would shut it down, close the game, bring it back up, and it would kind of be back to normal speed again. I was like, that's so
weird.
odd.
That is very odd.
Which is why, if you look at my thing, I played the game 23 times, but it only took me 5 days to play it. So it was me constantly like killing it and starting it up again.
Oh gosh, that would be so frustrated.
Yeah, I would compare it to like if you're watching a really, really brilliant film. Like I at no point in time was ever going to say, no, I don't want to play this anymore, because I was really enjoying it. It had some issues that I was willing to overlook. But it's like watching your favorite film, but the DVD's got a scratch on it, and it's playing like 1 second behind the sound with the audio.
Oh god,
that's the worst.
I hate when that kind of thing happens.
Yeah, so it was just something I had to make my peace with. And do you know what? The game is really, really good. It's really charming. Whenever the sound's working properly, the soundtrack's really good. The art style is very like Roller Drome, which I loved. I like the natural, kind of unnatural frame rate sort of thing. There's just so much to like about it, and I can see why it got rave reviews. But there's just the performance issues, and there's other quality of life things I really didn't like. Like there's and because I go for 100%, it might not have agitated as many people, but there is a quest line where you have to like open up these certain things. You get these collectibles, and it leads to the end of a quest. But one of the end aspects of it is you get to the guy, you tell them, I've done all of that, and he says, okay, I need to investigate, give me a couple of days. There's no way to skip time in the game.
Oh no.
Oh no.
And the day-night cycle is about 20 minutes per day. And I had nothing else left to do in the game. Like I'd done
You just
it
have
all.
to like wait for like 40 minutes.
I just let the game idle for like an hour and a half and just walked away from it. It was just it just had no appreciation for my time. And
that's really frustrating.
there was a couple of things like that throughout the game, but I will sell. I'll do the JT thing and I'll sell the game to Melika, because that's what I need.
You almost had me at collectibles, so go for it.
This is exactly the thread that I'm going on. So the main collectible in the game is a thing called chum eggs.
Okay.
And they're little worms that you collect, and then they give you an egg, and then you take them to the chum queen, and they give you extra stamina when you get enough.
Oh,
and the eggs hatch.
Worms.
They're essentially like little worms, yeah. Whenever you take them to the nest, and you get like a batch of 20 of them, then they all appear behind the mum, and
are they all different styles?
No, they're all the same, sadly. But they're very cute.
That does still sound cool. Because one of my favorite things about Spyro Year of the Dragon is that each individual dragon egg hatches into a completely different dragon. It's like they have different names, and they have different like dances and things that they do when they hatch, and they're different colors. It's very exciting. So if you could like replicate that in the game, that is what I would go for.
That is definitely a missed opportunity. But the chum eggs,
that's my number one favorite collectible in any game, is the dragon eggs in Spyro, because like there's different stuff. I want collectibles that look different.
They are cute. And the chum eggs are cute too. You would like them.
They do sound cute. I'm gonna Google chum eggs in Sable.
I want to ask, is it very much like in Hollow Knight when you're saving the grubs for the grub father, and every time you save a grub, they're in the background like wiggling, saying "Oi, hi," and
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically the same thing, yeah.
But does it have the
They
same?
do look pretty cute.
I don't want to spoil it, or should like what happens at the end of the grub father quest in Hollow Knight? Is it very much like that?
Oh,
Do you know what happens, Melika?
I know what happens. I don't
Okay.
want to think about it. I don't want to remember.
I'm just very conscious that there is an audience of indie people that might have not played
Exactly.
it.
That's why I'm
you're
not.
Okay.
That's why I'm keeping my mouth shut. Keep my mouth shut.
But yeah, that is how I would sell it to you. But in general, I'm struggling to give the game a review to the point where I would recommend it, just because there are so many things wrong with it that you have to really enjoy yourself to want to play it, because there's so many things wrong with it. I have heard it is a better performance on the PC, but I don't know how true that is, but apparently the PS5 is definitely the worst in terms of performance for that game, because it came after everything else, I reckon. But yeah, that was Sable, and I really enjoyed it. It was definitely worth the time. But again, it had its flaws. That is the theme that I'm having for all these
Yeah, I was
games.
gonna say we got to consist because the thing with Sable, there's something about the art style that didn't appeal to me, because I could have played it on Game Pass, but it was coming off, and I could choose between that and Echo Generation. I went for Echo Generation, which no regrets, by the way. Echo Generation was fantastic, but yeah, so Sable just never quite appealed to me enough to make it something I play.
No, see, whenever I saw the art style, I was like, oh, I need to play that. Like,
No, it's just not my kind of thing. It's hard to describe it, but like it makes me feel a certain way that like almost like I'm emptying. It's like it sucks something out of me. It makes me feel like really disconnected with the world. It's very hard to describe it. It's got very flat colors, and I hate when that happens. That kind of desaturation just makes it feel like my life is being desaturated. I don't like it in a game. I need vibrancy. I'm fine with monochromatic as well, as long as it's intentional. But like any like muted, desaturated color palettes, it's just like there's something about it. I just don't trust it.
okay.
I just know it's gonna leave me feeling empty and confused.
Okay, well, that's fair enough. And because the game doesn't give you a lot of hand holding, you'd be even more confused.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not like the Outer Wilds where it gives you all of the tools. You don't have a lot of the tools. You just have to figure it out. But I have noticed it is a game that is ripe for guides, so we may do a few of those.
All right.
And then the last one that I had been playing, and I've only played a couple of hours literally today, and I don't want to speak in any sort of critical way about it at the minute, is Viewfinder. I've had a couple of hours of it so far.
That's finally out.
It is. So far, I kind of like it. It's clever. There's a lot to it.
I'm sad that you're only saying kind of like it, because you've been looking forward to it for so long.
From a gameplay standpoint, it's clever enough, and it's giving me. It's constantly evolving as I'm playing through, so I think it's good in that regard. I don't give a toss about the story thus far, and I don't know if I'm going to. What I will say is all the little cute things that it's doing on the side I'm really liking. There is a cat. I like the cat. There is a recurring joke about like a little Roomba that they called Dustin the Dustbin. And he's very cute, and you get to like kind of liberate him from all of these like little blueprints and build armies of little Roombas, and it's quite good. That was fun, but it's more succeeding on its kind of silliness and charm rather than its kind of underlying story. It's just not grabbing me. But maybe there'll be a little twist and it'll kind of pick up. I don't know. But from the gameplay side of things, it's pretty good. I want to see if it can keep that cadence throughout the entire run. But I'm on a third of I think 6 acts, so
Okay.
maybe about 30-40% of the way through. And
So
so far,
it's quite a short game then.
oh yeah, I think I'll have that finished and probably tomorrow, to be honest.
Are you looking for the plat for it?
It seems pretty doable, but it's a puzzle game, so I'll get stuck on something and have to wait for a guide at some point. I know I will. That's the way with puzzle games. There's always going to be something. But there are some kind of like cool puzzles that they do that aren't related to, well, they are somewhat related to the Viewfinder side of things, but they do something different with it. Like, for example, one I've encountered at the minute is a Tamagotchi, where you can pick up a little Tamagotchi and then you do the picture of it, and then it's a literal Tamagotchi where you have to
That's
like,
really
Oh, that's
cool.
adorable.
yeah, I got a little trophy for that and I felt good. But yeah, that's all that I have been playing thus far. I am going to mention one more thing, and I'm not going to mention any particular one because I'm just kind of giving them 5 minutes each. But they basically released all the games for the Game Maker's Toolkit's Game Jam. So I'm gradually kind of giving them a little bit of time. I might do a little article on it to showcase the best of the best in that regard. But there's some quite cool stuff. You'd be surprised how many of these little projects from game jams turn into like games that you know today. It's crazy.
I took part in a game jam once, but nobody appreciated because like I don't have the development skills to like make anything in Unity. So I made a text-based game using Twine, and no one appreciated it, and it made me very angry. So I was like, fine, I'm gonna leave it. I won't ever make a game ever again. No, I will get back into it eventually, but I was very sad because it had 10,000 words. I'd worked really hard on it. I think I had like a week to do it, and I'd put so much effort in, and I'd learned the whole new software. And then people were just like, some people said nice things, but most people just rated it down because it didn't have fancy enough visuals or like fancy enough gameplay. It's like, you got to read and make choices. That is the gameplay.
Some people have no taste.
I know.
What can you do? But yeah, there's some cool stuff in there. One I was playing there is about like coding your own game, and how I would describe it is like the term was like role reversal. That was the theme of the games, the game jam. So essentially what they were doing is making you the developer instead of them, and they would have you code the game with like little puzzles, but then they also had these little bits where you would make the assets within the game, and they would do like it was like a little pixel art thing where you could make your own pixel art, and that was then the assets.
Wicked. I love that.
Did it
was
like
quite cool.
Enough diversity that it's like, okay, this is like wholly your own, or did like most people's, do you think, start to like look the same for like some assets?
No, because it's like a pixel art kind of grid, you can do whatever you want within that grid. Like it's up to your creativity. So it, ultimately, a lot of people are just going to draw penises because that's what they do. But
any game that allows you to draw your own thing, that is always going to happen.
But yeah, that was a cool one. And then there's a couple of other ones too as well. Like off the top of my head, there's one that's kind of like a platforming puzzler where you are a golfer, but instead of hitting the ball into the hole, you hit the ball and then you shoot up in there and you have to get yourself into the hole. It's pretty interesting. There's some other cool stuff there. They're all free to play, and I think they're all browser friendly. So if you go and just check them out, give them a try. 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's everything I've been doing. Someone jump in.
I mean, I haven't played that many indies these last couple of weeks because I've been playing more Crash Team Rumble, but I played a few. So I did some more of Gylt, which I won't talk too much about because I mentioned it last episode. But I slowly started kinda understanding the appeal of horror games. Not enough to fully justify them. Definitely won't be something I'm exploring, but I sort of understood it. I was like, this is kind of fun in a not fun way. It was weird, but like, yeah, I kind of got accustomed to the fear and almost started craving it. But I stopped short of that point where it's like, I'm going to seek this. So I will never play it again, but it was a great game, which I know sounds like a contradiction, but it's more that I recognize it's not for me. But if you like horror survival games, definitely check out Gylt because it's brilliant. It's really well made. It's got really good. I love the story in it. It's like a really powerful message about sort of like bullying and facing your own demons. And I won't give any spoilers, but it's definitely got a great story. Gameplay is fun in that like it's not that much to do. Like you just basically move around. You can't jump, but you can crouch and you can like use a torch to defeat enemies and do all kinds of stuff really. But the pacing's well enough that you don't really feel limited by the fact that you can't jump or anything like that, because there's enough obstacles to dodge around and the monsters and everything that you're always doing something. It's not just walking around empty spaces, which I can't stand in games. So yeah, Gylt's definitely a good one. And then I played 2 other games this month. So I started Chicory, which I think you might have mentioned last time, JT.
Yeah, I love Chicory. It was made by the same people who made Wandersong. They even have like a character that's a nod off to the character in Wandersong, and it's very cute. But it's like Sorry, you talk about it, but I love it so much.
Yeah, but because it was added to Game Pass a few weeks ago, so I've had it on my list for a while, and I finally got around to playing it. I'm really enjoying it. It's very cute because the idea is that in this sort of universe, there's someone called the Wielder who has like a magic paintbrush that puts color to the world, but the whole world's been drained of color, and so you've kind of taken it upon yourself to become the new Wielder and paint the world. And so every sort of the levels kind of split up into basically just the size of your screen, and you move between sort of the sides to, you can go like up to a new area or across to a new area, and it creates a new screen each time rather than it rolling across. But every one you come to is kind of like a blank canvas, and you can use your brush to add color, and you have 4 different colors per area, which kind of change depending on the area you're in. So each sort of section of the game will have a completely different color palette and aesthetic and vibe, and you can get different textures for your brush. So I've got one that like fills the whole screen with dots, and then I've got one that I love because it's concentric circles if you use the large or medium brush, but if you use the small brush, the circles kind of create these really fun lines and like gaps and spaces within themselves. And like you can layer the different textures on top to create completely new canvases, and it's really kind of exciting sort of going back through the areas you've been and seeing the different colors you've used. And you can use the paint to activate certain things in the environment. So there's like trees that they stay upright if they're blank, but if you paint them, it cuts them down. And then there's like these really, I can't remember their calls, but there's these fun little plants that when you sort of paint them, they'll flick you right up onto ledges and stuff. It's just really cool. One thing I love about it as well is that it does not punish you if you're not good at games. So, which I am, obviously, but I'm just in case anyone else isn't. But for the boss battles, there's a completely different kind of gameplay to the regular, because the regular game is moving around using your paintbrush to solve puzzles. But in the boss battles, you have to fight monsters by like painting across their eyes and stuff like that, and they're trying to kill you with like shooting lasers or whatever. And so you're basically running around the screen with your left analog stick and moving your paintbrush with your right analog stick, and it's a lot. You can get confused if you've not got great coordination, which again could be anyone just speaking at it. But basically there's a really cool thing. So if you die, it will ask you, do you want more lives? So you can choose if you want to play it properly and go back to the beginning of the fight and say, no, okay, I won't take any lives. Or you can be like, yes, give me more lives. And it'll throw you straight back into the fight. You don't have to restart. So it lets you completely enjoy the game at your own pace, which I think is a fantastic accessibility measure, which I'm really enjoying seeing games like that include accessibility measures like that, because I don't think it's fair to punish people for not having the gaming skill and to deny them the rest of the game. So I think the fact that it lets you just play it at your own pace, you can either restart the thing or you can just keep going, is brilliant. And yeah, I'm just really enjoying it so far. I think I'm about halfway through now, maybe a bit more. But yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah.
Sadly, about the accessibility side of things, I think that's a sign of the times. In and around that bracket, whenever that was made, games were doing that, and I think they've stopped doing it again, which is a little bit sad.
Yeah.
But I definitely agree. Like, if Tunic was another one that done it
I
very
will say
well.
It's 2021, and that was Tunic as well.
Yeah.
Tunic started being made in like 2018 and released 2022. But yeah.
It was something that was happening a lot then, and I think it's kind of died off a little bit, which is sad to see. But
it is, because it's such a great way. Because I'd never really encountered it before Tunic, and I was kind of like, because I know there was like a lot of discussion about it when Elden Ring was released, and I was kind of on the thing like, yeah, it would be too difficult to code. And then I played Tunic, and I was like, wait a second, you can just turn death off like it does for Tunic. You can do that for any game. Like, that is not hard to code. Just put if death, no death, or whatever in the coding thing. Like, it would be so easy to implement to make it accessible to everyone. And you completely used to be on the side of like, yeah, some games should be hard and that's what they are, but I actually am now on the side of, if people want the game to be hard, they can have it hard, and if we don't want it hard, should still be able to enjoy the game. So yeah, Tunic is very much the one that completely changed my perspective on it, just because I saw how easy it was and how still very fun it was. Because I turned it on because I was having trouble with one particular enemy, and I was like, you know what, I like playing it like this. This is fun. So I just kind of did it, and now I like seeing accessibility measures in games, because even though I can play them on regular modes and it won't take me that much longer to beat a boss, ain't nobody got time for that. Like,
Also,
I don't want to be grinding against a boss. I want to be exploring the world.
Oh, I totally agree with that. I started playing through like Elden Ring and Hollow Knight, just trying out with mods that make the game significantly easier. Like, you have more health and do more damage, and it just makes the game a little more relaxing. Which I like the challenge of it, but it's nice to just unwind a little bit and just go through the game and like not have to suffer for like the endings in God Home. And it's really nice. But yeah, Melika, I really want to ask in Chicory, have you gone to like the Wilder School and done the things where like you make your own painting? based on what they're saying.
Yeah, I love making my own paintings. And I love seeing them displayed in different places. Like when you do your first painting, it's before you open the museum. So I thought maybe that painting was gone. And then I visited my parents' house and my sisters had taken it home and put it on the wall. And I was like, oh, I remember when I made that. It's so cute. I love it.
Oh, and my favorite part of that is, do you know, like you can create a GIF from that? Where if you interact with that painting, you can see yourself making that painting. Like going through the process of that.
It's really fun seeing my process. Yeah, that's I loved that when I discovered it. It was really, really cool. But yeah, no, I do like making the different paintings, and I like that the class compliment me. Even though I know my paintings are terrible, it's nice to hear the other people in the class saying, "Wow, I love your use of color. What bold brush strokes!" Like, yeah, boy.
And then there's the one girl who tears apart. So like, actually, that's not very.
Oh
good.
yeah, it's like get out of here, Radish. Why are you not being my cheerleader like everyone else? She hates me for being the new wielder. She thinks it should be herself, and it's like, nah. I'm the one who found the brush randomly, so it's mine now. And then the other thing I've been playing is, well, you know this, Callum, it's sticky business, because Callum very kindly got me a code like he said he would. So
you begged and begged.
I only begged one. But yeah, so that is the one I mentioned a couple of episodes ago after the Wholesome Direct, and it's where you essentially run your own sticker business. And I thought I would like it more than I did.
Does it not have any substance?
Well, it's fun at first until you realize this is the game.
Yeah,
that's what I was wondering about.
Yeah, like I'm not gonna rib on it because it's like it knows what it's doing, but it's not. I don't dislike it. I am enjoying it, and I probably will keep playing it. But I'm just not enjoying it as much as I thought I would. It's very, what's the best word for it? Very finicky, I guess. Like, for example, one of the things you do is you print out your own stickers, and it's 10 currency to print out a sheet. You can't just tell the sheet, okay, I want to fill it with this particular sticker, autofill. No, you have to individually drag each sticker onto the screen, being careful not to make them overlap, kind of like optimize the space and get as much profit out of each sheet. And it can take you like 2 or 3 minutes just to fill up a sheet to print. And
that's life in the sticker business.
I don't think it is. I feel like in the sticker business, you could do some kind of like drag and replace thing. Because like once I've got the first row, I know I want every subsequent row to look exactly like that first one. Why can't I just drag it down like I'll be able to do on like Photoshop or something? But no, I have to like drag 30 or 40 individual stickers, twist them around, make them fit, and it is a bit finicky. But I do like packing the orders because I can put like different colored tissue paper and different color like squiggly bits in the middle and layer the stickers. I don't think that actually matters whether you make the stickers look nice or just randomly click and just put them in a jumble. But I like making them look nice because I like imagining my customers open them up like, wow. But from what I can tell from like the end of day reward screens, you're not rewarded any differently whether or not you do it. But I do it anyway. But I do have a few sort of immediate flaws that I have with the game. One of the main things I have is that in the trailer, I thought you could make sticker sheets. That's what it looked like. You can't. You can make individual stickers, which you like print out on the sticker sheets, but you cannot sell sticker sheets. Now, I would love to be able to create like sort of themed designs, like where that, for example, like different dinosaurs doing things, for example. I'd like to have like a whole sheet of like a dinosaur playing a guitar or playing football or eating something, all on one sticker sheet for the customer to buy. But I would have to make the stickers individually, and you can only have so many slots in your shop before you have to like buy new ones. And it's not what I'm looking for. I want to be able to do more. One thing I do like though, they've got like lots of different, the sticker design thing is very easy to work with, and you start with access to a few different sort of basic sticker designs, and then you can buy more in the shop, and then you kind of like layer them onto each other to create your own sticker. And I do like the range of stuff they've got in the shop. I do wish you could recolor it, because you can recolor the basic shapes. Any of the pre-designs like the animals or the instruments or the gaming stuff, any of that, you've just got to stick with the color it gives you, which I don't like. I think it'd be much more fun if you could recolor them. But overall, like, it's a decent game. It's not bad. It's not good. Well, yeah, it's not good. I'm not gonna lie, but it's not bad. It's fun enough, and I like it well enough. But yeah, it's not what I hoped it would be.
I'm very shocked that a game about stickers couldn't give you stickers in abundance. I thought that they would be able to manage.
Yeah,
that.
I was very surprised at the lack of sticker sheets. I won't lie. I was like, why is it only individual sticker sheets are like such a huge part of what it is to run a sticker business. You know, I'm a sticker person. I love stickers. I never buy individual stickers. I exclusively buy sticker sheets. So to see the lack of that was disappointing. But I am very happy with a few of my own designs, and it makes me very happy seeing the stuff I create. And then seeing the customers say how much they love it. It's like, oh yeah, they love my thing. So yeah, it's cool.
I really want to ask, is there
Yeah.
a bit where you can like interact with other players and see what stickers they made, or is it all just
I don't
single
know
player?
if you like. I'll be honest. I have a PC code for this because that was what I think that's only available perhaps on Steam. To give you an idea of how long I haven't used Steam for, I had to find my login details, and then when I logged in, it was like, this is the first time you're using it on this PC. I've had this laptop since 2016, so I have not used Steam in the past 7 years. So perhaps there's a way to interact with others in the Steam community. I think it's probably just more sharing your screenshots and stuff. But yeah, like there's not enough interaction as well. That's another thing. You can't really interact with your customers. There's no way to promote your business. So basically every single day you'll get a random amount of orders, but you can't like, you know, use some of your money to buy advertising space to get more orders or anything like that, which I think is a bit, again, that's in a real sticker business. You'll be promoting on social media, or you'll be like asking, I don't know, influencers to say, hey, look at this cool sticker I bought, you can buy it here. And I think it's very like, it's literally just every single day, pack orders, maybe design a new sticker if you've got time, because the way that the game works, you have like a set amount of time per day, and each thing you do will take up time. So if you've got a lot of orders, you won't be able to design a new sticker that day. And then other times you might have the space to design a sticker, but you can't afford to buy new things for that sticker because you've got no money. So at the end of the day, it's like, do I make a sticker with stickers I've already used, or do I just sleep and waste half my day because I've got no, because like sometimes you have like 2 orders in a day which take nothing, and it's, yeah, I feel like the pacing's a bit off. There's not enough to do. The stuff that there is to do is fun, but it could be better. But it might become better. It's only been out for like a day, so.
Put it this way: if you didn't have any interest in it, it would not have got covered.
But I think it does appeal to a certain audience. I think it's very much a casual, relaxing game. Like I put 3 hours into it so far. You barely feel the time go by. It's like it just sucks your life away in a good way.
Oh, like fire washing simulator, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that kind of vibe, but like cuter.
Okay. I mean, I can get on board with that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I
stickers.
think it's an interesting one where it's not as bad as you guys think it is, but it's not as good as I hoped it would be. But I think you guys are probably thinking it's worse than it is. I think, yeah.
It's reminding me a lot of, just from hearing you talk about it, Hoko Life that I cover, which is kind of like...
Yeah, I remember you telling me about that.
It was like an Animal Crossing clone, but it was like with all of the actual charm and assets stripped back, and it was just very hollow. So...
Speaking of Animal Crossing, actually, going back to Chicory, at the start of the game, it doesn't ask you to name your character. It says, what's your favorite food? So I put cookies, and that becomes your name in the game. So now my character's called Cookies, and I love it. And it's also very lucky because I nearly put Skins, because I do love jacket potato skins. And if my character was called Skins, that would be really, really bad.
Sounds like a prison name.
But like, yeah, Cookies makes me extra happy because you play as a dog in Chicory, and in Animal Crossing, there's a dog called Cookie who I love. So it reminds me of her.
Oh, that's so good. Quick story for the Chicory. I named my dog Spaghetti, but then I misspelled Spaghetti, and I just had the canon is that Spaghetti's parents misspelled their name, and they just ran with it at birth.
Oh man, I love that. Spaghetti's a great name for the character.
It was very fun, yeah.
I was going to say about Chicory before we moved on. I think it's a weird thing to say, but I think it's like an evolution of games which had a lot more money to throw at the idea of like painting, like Concrete Genie and Okami, ones that do that, but Chicory does it so much better, and it's all pixel and cute. And, it's a weird way to look at it, but I do look at it that way. It's probably like the best painting game that I'm aware of.
Yeah, no, it feels so much more personal for like each section. And then I don't want to spoil it for you, Melika, but like it's all, there is a payoff for everything, and it feels really good.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying it so far. I'm looking forward to sort of finding out what happens next and things.
Yeah.
How about you, JT? What you been playing?
Yeah, I've been playing a lot of indie games actually. I bought quite a couple on sale, and I've just been going nuts. So it's been really good. I played a couple of horror games. I played Escape the Backrooms with friends on a stream, and that was very much like, if you know what backrooms are, like SCPs. It's like that kind of horror where it's like you're trapped in an area where you can't really, like, you're trapped inside basically, and you have to escape. And it was not very good, like, puzzle-wise, but the visuals looked good, and it had that fun quality, just, like, playing with friends, like, because it was a horror game in that regard, like, it felt fun because of that. But, like, if I'd been playing single player, I would not have been having a very good time. Not because it was scary, but more just because it was just the puzzles weren't very, like, very intuitive, and I think we had to have, like, our chats help us get through it for the most part, so it was okay. It's very much, it was very much a streamer game, but, like, I don't know if I'd recommend it as, like, a horror game specifically. But then I also ended up playing Friday the 13th with some voice actors, which was fun.
Ooh.
And I never played that game before or really watched the movies. I kind of like had a vague idea of what that was. And the game went on sale because they're about to shut down the servers within the year because
I was about to say, I thought the servers were down.
yeah, no, there's like some controversy over like the intellectual property of like Friday the 13th. So they are shutting down soon, but because of that, the game went like on very high sale. Like I think it was 90% off or something.
Oh wow.
And yeah, it was great. I was playing with some voice actors, and they started like voice acting as the villain as they were chasing you. It was so
That
much
must have been
fun.
pretty scary.
Yeah, and then I got to play as the killer too, and I was like, wow, this is a great
Is
fun.
Freddy Krueger in Friday the 13th?
It's Jason, I think, with
Okay.
the mask, and I think you can play like a couple different versions of him. One is he just has like a bag on his head. It's kind of
So
silly.
that I understand it, it's effectively the same format as like Dead by Daylight, isn't it?
Oh,
Same sort of
absolutely.
thing.
I
Yeah.
would say it feels a little bit better in the sense of like, I don't know, just it for me, Dead by Daylight, it always felt like there wasn't as satisfying to like, you didn't have like that meaty chunk as you got the survivor. Versus very much like you find the survivor, you can kill them immediately unless they have a knife and they stab you off. And if you're as a survivor, if you team up, you can shoot the mask off and then you kill the monster and everything. But the monster always wins. It's just it's
It's
too
just when
easy.
do they win?
Yeah. And yeah, I think there was one scary part of the game where the mask came off, and I was ready for it. And I was playing as the monster, and then I turned around and saw my face, and I was like, ah, it freaked me out a little bit. But again, I know nothing about the game. It's not going to be very playable very soon. But if you have some friends, and if you enjoy playing those kind of horror games where one of you is like just the bad guy going after the rest of you, it's very fun. So that was good. I'm just sad that the game won't be available like very soon. So. Yeah.
Last chance, people. Come on.
That kind of reminds me of the I don't know, have any of you guys played Halo? Because
Yeah.
Halo 3 had a custom game mode called Fat Kid, where basically one of you would play as like a really, really slow character with a grab hammer. So basically, if you got to them, they died. And it was like so great. Like you'd move very slowly, and the others would have to like rush forward, trying to clear obstacles and jump things, like going through this like really convoluted pathway, trying to stay ahead of the fat kid, like the zombie kind of character. And that kind of like reminds me of like that feeling of being chased by your friends. It's like a co-op game with your friends, and that was a lot of fun.
Oh, it's great.
And did that tasteful game mode not stick for future Halo
I mean,
games now?
it wasn't one of the ones like released by like the game itself. It's like a custom mode on Halo 3, because Halo 3 you can kind of create your own custom modes, but it was like one of the most popular ones. Yeah, it didn't have the most tasteful name, but it was a lot of fun.
Fair enough.
Oh.
It'd be pretty cool if Bungie just decided to, yeah, we'll do a mode called
Yeah,
Fat
Bungie
Kid.
just said like, yeah, let's call it back. No.
Oh.
Anything aside from the old horrors?
Yeah, I played a bit more of Dave the Diver, which I mentioned and talked about the last two streams, so I won't talk about it too much. But
I think I got to watch you playing it a bit on Twitch, right?
yeah, no, it was very cozy, and it was funny. I was trying to I was claiming, it's cozy, but like it gives you a gun, and there's a couple of like fighting scenes where you're fighting pirates under the water with a gun, but it was very cute and wholesome, and I'm still surprised by how much content is in the game. I really thought it was like, okay, you catch fish, you build a sushi bar, that's it, but no, there's a whole like mystery with sea people and trying to save the sea people from the giant monsters, and then you can gamble under the water at the sea people casinos and stuff, and it has so much to it, but yeah,
Underwater gambling sounds great.
it's great. You can gamble. There's a couple of different ones. One of them is you race seahorses, which is kind of cool because you can go collect the seahorses and train them, and it's really adorable and sweet. But
That is the thing that I got from it, just looking at it. Like, there's just so much going on, and there's just
Yeah,
so many avenues that you can go down.
they do a really good job of handholding you. Like you have to work a while before you get the bit where like you can have a farm or you can help out another restaurant, and it takes a while to get there. But once you get to a certain point, it's like, oh well, I have so much to do. Like I don't know where to start, so it can get a little overwhelming. But
That's what I've heard people saying. It's kind of like a brand new format and take on the Stardew Valley sort of
Yeah.
cycle. But the only thing I would ask is, does it get to a point where you go, oh, I'm done? Because Stardew Valley never really gets there.
I would say it does have an ending where it's like there's a certain amount of acts. Like there's actually a narrative to the game. So I would say I appreciate that because Stardew Valley, it's very much play at your own pace. I mean, I guess you could say the community center was the story. For a lot of people, it's like, okay, here's my goal.
Yeah.
But this game,
I was so happy when I finally completed the community center.
oh gosh, it is a good feeling. But
It's the best, especially because like you get so many hearts with everyone in the town, and it's like everyone loves me.
But yeah, no, I would say definitely this game has a point where you can say like, okay, I finished the game, I can be done. And there's some replay value where it's like, okay, I can enjoy going through the motions again because the first few cutscenes are so cute. But yeah, it's once you finish the game, I think you can walk away from it. I don't know how really replayable it is, but I still highly recommend it.
I've heard that due to the mass popularity, it may be getting console releases relatively soon. So
Ooh.
I'm surprised
would be
it
good.
hasn't had a console release. It is that good of a game. That's like, oh,
Brilliant.
yeah. But yeah, you guys should totally check it out once it comes to your respective consoles.
I mean, it feels like the kind of thing that would be added to Game Pass. So
Oh, that would be
Feels like the kind of thing that PlayStation will wait a year before it adds.
Oh, yeah. So besides that wonderful game, of course, I played a really old game called I Divine Cybermancy, and it's a very strange game. It's like kind of a Warhammer 40K ripoff, but I'd say to describe it, it's one of the best RPG FPSs I played in the sense of you can like build your character in a very like different wide array of spaces, and it feels really good to build that character. Like you play as, I don't even know what you play as because the lore is so like obtuse, but you play as a soldier on Mars, I think, or like Earth in a far dystopia, fighting a Federation or Satan, or the game does a pretty bad job telling you what you're fighting. But I really enjoyed playing through it because it just had that rewarding sense of like you could build a really good or really bad character, and the game would let you build that bad character. And the combat felt really good. It's just all the aspects of the game in terms of the gameplay felt great, but it had some really bad downsides where if you died a certain amount of times, you would get a permanent stat debuff that you can unlock. You could remove with late game research, but it would just, the more you died, the harder the game got.
It feels like it should be the opposite. Like the more you die, the easier it gets.
Yeah, no, it was not very accessible, like in any regard.
In terms of like in a comparison, would you say it's something like Pillars of Eternity or something like that, or is it even more complex to the point where it is just Warhammer?
I would say because it's still an FPS, so I don't know if I'd say kind of Pillars of Eternity, but it's still very much a shooter in that sense. But one thing I'll say is it's also it was translated from French, and they did a very bad job at the translation. But because of that, actually, it has a lot more charm to it too. Like at the very end of the game, I think the mentor, he called me like the king of rats before he betrayed me, and I was so like, oh, that's so sweet. Or all of the looters that are supposed to be really bad guys are talking about rapping and like, hey, what's up, homeboy? And they're very cute gangsters.
Oh man!
And it was there's just so much love poured into it. I won't say too much more on it, but there's one bit where you encountered a robot, and this robot serves no point to the story. They just tell you their bit about how they broke away from the Federation and wanted to start a robot-human symbiotic race of people, and they were going to go on their quest to amend relations by time traveling, and this is like, okay, well, can you help me at all? And they say no. And it felt so cute. There were so many nice stories in it. But then I finished the game, and it was actually pretty short. To actually beat the game, you have to beat it 3 times over. And there isn't, besides the gameplay, there isn't too much gameplay value to it. It's like you can do 3 different routes, but they're pretty similar. But I thought it was good. It had a lot of charm to it, but it was still a pretty old game, and it's very hard. So,
and when you say old, how old?
I think it's like 2000s. It's a Source game that's very much like Half-Life 2. So it's like playing a little bit better version of Half-Life 2. So it's pretty old.
I mean, if it's 2000, that's not bad graphics for the time.
Yeah, but you can see that it's aged, but it hasn't aged too badly. I'll say it's very, you can tell like, oh, this is what this is. So yeah.
I mean, if you can play any game from the early 2000s and it still looks good today, they've done a very good job.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I don't know if I can recommend it, but I enjoyed it, and if you can get it on sale, it usually goes on sale for like 80% off. So maybe check it out. I will caution that the game says you can buy. I made the mistake of buying a 4-pack where you can buy like 4 copies of the game, and it says you can play with friends, but you can't. I tried. I spent 2 hours with a friend trying to make it work, and it's impossible. No. So don't be fooled by that.
Well, at least you've got some weird eclectic gifts to give your friends.
Yeah, and I did. And it's like, JT, what is this game? It's like, you might enjoy it, but I got it for $2, so maybe you'll enjoy it. I don't know. But I had a good time with it still. Yeah. For the most part, I love RPGs. I love indie games, so it was a good like combination of the two. Yeah, besides that, my favorite one of my favorite games of all time came out yesterday, and I'm very happy because they came out with a definitive edition of it, and it was free, and I didn't know it was free, and I booted up the game. I was like, oh, I'm so excited, and the game is called, we talked about it early in the stream, or before the stream, but it's called Lisa the Painful, the definitive edition, and I talked about it last time, but it's a very
what's it about, JT?
All right, so it's almost like embarrassed to talk what it's about. You play as a midlife crisis dad in a world where all of the women in the world have disappeared, so like half the population, and all of the men have kind of gone crazy and become perverts. And you're the dad of like the last girl in the world, and your daughter is stolen from you, so you go on a quest to bring her back, and it's very naughty.
Sounds so wholesome, JT.
Yeah, of course.
Like, you're a nasty person. He likes that game. You leave him alone.
Wait, he likes that game and I'm the nasty.
But I mentioned about it last time. The like the currency in the game is dirty magazines. All of the men are just obsessed about getting it on, and it's very vulgar, but God, the humor and charm is still as good as from I remember it 8 years ago. It's very funny. Like every scene in the game is great. The one scene, I forgot about it, but there's a man who talks about his horse of a wife, God rest her soul, and he just goes on a 15-minute monologue about her and his daily shenanigans. And he was supposed to be the lore guy, and he's like, "No, I'm just gonna tell you about my day." And it's just, there's so much love into every part of it. And what I'm really happy about the definitive edition is that the original game did a really bad job telling you about the gameplay, and the definitive edition does a better job telling you about it, and does it in a very fun way where you go on a quest to find your best friend's tutorial. And it's a very easy quest. And he just goes off, it's like, wow, you're such an important person for finding my book. Good on you. I'm so proud. And I just love the character, and I know like what his fate later on, it was very bad, but I'm just so happy for it. It's like, oh, I got this win, and I'm so excited to play more of it, but I just know that it's going to end in tears, so I'm excited to play through more of it. I'm not excited to finish it.
Do you know the most sickening thing? That is a game that has popped up on PS5. No bother. Straight away.
All right.
Now, I was in the camp where I was like, do you know what? I seen the name of it and I was like, oh, that was the one JT was talking about. And I was like, you know, if it's a couple of quid, I'll play it. I was like, it's 20 quid. I'll maybe leave it.
Oh, that's
just based on descriptions alone.
I wouldn't play it even if you paid me.
Yeah, this may not be your cup of tea, Melika, but it is very funny. I will say that. But yeah, that's mostly what I've been playing. I played a couple of their demos, but we can talk about that in the next section. But so, Lisa the Paintball game, I don't know if I can remember it if like vulgarity isn't your cup of tea, but it has a lot of charm. The gameplay is even better, and the visuals look phenomenal with the definitive edition. So, and if you already own the game, then just play through it again. It's there. Why not? You know what you're playing through. So, yeah, there you go.
Well, that was a lovely, wholesome end to our
course.
section. Okay, guys, we will be back, and we'll be back with the indie games on our radar, so stick with us. Hello, boys and girls. We are back again. It is Indie Game Culture's second part. It is indie games on our radar. We're going to be looking at the games for the end of July, start of August time that are on our radar that we want you to know about. And JT, you can kick it off. I'm just going to tell you to kick it off.
Sure.
Do it, JT.
All right. Yeah.
Being forceful this time.
Yeah, I've been playing several games they have demos that are coming out, and I'm very excited for a couple of them. There's namely one of them I played last night. I think the game is coming out today. It's called Repair House, and it's very much in that same vein of Starship Breaklight. I think I'm butchering the name, or like just the Power Wash Simulator. Just like in those games, you would go and like clean a house or break ships apart, and it was very like. It's a game where you could put a podcast on and just like listen while you do. And this game, you take old broken items and you fix them. So it's like a broken toy box and you fix one of the lenses, and it's great because you have to identify, okay, what's broken. You have to manually take the thing apart, order the pieces, and put the pieces back in and put it back together. And it feels really good. It's like you're a elf from a Christmas thing in Santa, and just like you're putting the toy back together, and it feels really nice and sweet. And I liked it, but it is actually the game advertises itself more as a comfort game where you can just sit back and relax. But for some of the later items, I ended up being a lot of work because I identify, okay, what's wrong? How do I take this thing apart? And it was a bit of manual labor, but it felt very sweet, and the game knows what it was going for. But
and you guys mocked me for sticky business.
That's fair.
How is
enough for
this any different?
This game is just plain out work.
Well, I'm going to immediately take this on a tangent because I wanted to know about this, and I don't know anyone that's actually bought the game or played it. Starship Breaker, is that the one you're talking about?
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
Is it one of those games in the same realm as Power Wash Simulator? Is there any complexity to it? Because I like games where I can just play with no sound.
I mean, if you mess up, then the ship explodes and you die. But but you get cloned back, so it's okay. And I think you're not even you anymore. You're clone number 8 or number 502. It's
the delivery was so good. I really enjoyed that. Is it a cozy game? Well, it can be until you die.
Until you die an explosion in space.
But
I'll
it's
take
still
that as a firm no.
from what it is, it's still one of those like enjoyable manual labor games where you break the ship apart, you take the thing out, and you throw the rest of the ship apart before it explodes into this machine. So you just gotta watch out, and if you're too reckless, then you can like trigger the fuel line, and the ship just explodes. From what I know, so it's
so some stakes.
Yeah, some stakes, but you get cloned, so it's all right. You just have more debt in your account.
Okay.
Well, okay, you're dead, but it's more debt for your clone's account. So yeah.
Fair enough.
If you like cozy games, you can just play with the sound off. You might like Zoo Tycoon, Callum.
Oh.
Because that one you just basically build different zoo enclosures and buy different animals for it, and like change your prices and stuff to get more guests and stuff in. It's really sort of calming and relaxing. You play at your own pace.
I haven't played a tycoon game since like the old 90s roller coaster tycoon
Oh yeah,
games.
roller coaster tycoon.
Oh,
I
Roller
love that as
Coaster
a kid.
Tycoon was so good.
That was fun, where you can just build a roller coaster so dangerous everyone would die.
Oh man, but yeah, no, I think Zoo Tycoon would be worth checking out for you.
I might have a look at that. In fact, I think I have, because I can't remember if I got handed it for a review or something years ago. But I have like Planet Coaster or something like that. So same sort of
Planet Coaster.
I just saw the Jurassic Park Tycoon, where it's like if you mess up, the dinosaurs escape their enclosure and start eating people.
That definitely does not happen in Zoo Tycoon with
That's
the lions
good.
or anything. Oh yeah, that's fine. And sometimes the babies will have like a different like they might be like an albino or have like a different sort of like variant to them. That's really exciting.
Oh, you
Oh my
really,
gosh, it looks
great.
slightly different.
you really sold that.
I know. I nearly forgot the best part. It's like, how could I?
You know the sell it to Melika thing? You don't have to sell it to yourself. That's just us.
Oh man. How about what else
gosh.
you were looking forward to, JT?
Yeah, well, there's one that's not like that. It's very different and a little bit scary looking. It's called The Banished Vault, and it's a sci-fi expansionist kind of game where you build several sets of outposts as you're exploring a galaxy, and it's very much your like it kind of plays and feels like a game of FTL, but like a little bit more to it. And I love FTL, Faster Than Light. It just
I was gonna say
I-
you're always talking about it. It's like one of your favorites, right?
and I hate that's fair because it just takes so much time out of my day. And then like my ship explodes into little bits, and I'm so sad. I was like, oh wow, there.
Oh no.
That's the end of my 2-hour run. And yeah, I love that kind of I love sci-fi stuff, and just having a roguelike kind of thing that's I don't actually know if it's a roguelike. It doesn't really tell too much more about that stuff, but it's very much an expansionist resource management kind of game, and the visuals don't look great for some parts of it, but other parts like the narrative stuff, it looks very surreal and terrifying, which I kind of like. And yeah, it just I recommend maybe checking out if it comes out. It's coming out this week, I think. And it looks really it looks interesting, but also looks like you might have to have some good like a very engineering mind for building some of the space stations and spaceships and stuff. So I'm
Oh, does it have like a kind of Kerbal Space Program sort of vibe to it, where you actually have to know things?
yeah, it looks like again, I haven't played it yet. That one doesn't have a demo, but it does very much look like okay, you have to build the things you're going to be using throughout. So everything will feel more personal, but I hope you're good at building. I'm not, but I hope the game is more forgiving. So I'm excited to try that. I don't know.
As long as it rewards you for doing good building and it's funny when you can't. If it's funny when you can't, it's fine.
That'll feel nice too. I'm just I'm worried that I'll buy it and then I'll realize like, oh, this is a great game. I'm just very bad at it, kind of thing.
Been there.
Yeah, it's The Banished Vault, and I can't wait to check that out. And there's another one, Whispers of the West, that's coming out that has a demo, and it's a co-op detective game in the Wild West. And that's really interests me because I just played Shadows of Doubt that I got to review
Yeah, I was gonna say,
some months ago.
oh, you're talking about that one.
Yeah, and
I
I
love
love.
doing a co-op detective game. That
Yeah.
sounds really fun.
Oh, I'm really curious about it. I still haven't gotten to play it with a friend, but I love detective games like just putting the puzzle pieces together and figuring it out.
Yeah.
This feels like it'll play more like a game of phasmophobia, in the sense of you're just trying to figure out who the killer is by looking at these traits instead of just figuring out who the ghost or the monster is by these like this evidence. So I think that could be good, but I don't know, part of me is a little hesitant because I love the world of Shadow of Doubt, but the detective gameplay felt very just not very accessible to me because it was so hard for some aspects of it.
But because that one was procedurally generated and tried to go for replay value, that might be why. Is this other one kind of like one set story, one and done? But
Yes.
the USP is the co-op side.
Yeah, there's several different maps, and yeah, it looks like everything's preset. There might be some replayability, like some stuff is randomly generated, but for the most part, like it's pre-made stories and stuff. So I think that'll be better because everything is like, okay, there is actually some
Have
developer
proper
craft.
conclusions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's very few games I would say lend themselves to episodic things, but that's one game that, like one game genre where if they'd done episodic stuff, it would actually work.
Right.
And you don't see it very often either. They just release a brand new game instead. Like how many Dark Pictures anthologies is there? Too many.
I just haven't played those yet.
There's like 20 of them. So
Oh my
get
gosh.
at it.
Wow.
No, I don't think there's that many, but there's too many.
But yeah, no, this is Whispers in the West. It's a point-and-click detective game, and I'm curious about it. I'm gonna try playing with a friend and see if it's like, okay, is this worth my time? But as a demo, which is great, so I can see if like, okay, is this like, will I like this game before I get into it? And yeah, those are my big three. I was maybe gonna talk about at least the painful game, but it came out yesterday, so it's like, okay, it's out, so I don't have to look forward to it anymore. And
I think we've covered it quite well.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm glad. It deserves the attention.
Okay, cool. Well, I'll jump in with mine because there's not a lot. I'm going to leave Flutter Away alone because I know Malika's probably going to
I
talk about it.
haven't. You can talk about it.
Okay. So one game that's coming out
Oh,
is
wait, is that coming out now?
3rd
I
of
thought that was
August.
Oh,
3rd of
yeah,
August.
that's why I left it. I was saying July games only. That's fair enough. Okay, yeah. You
It's
talk
just it's
about
very
it.
very early
It's
August.
100% me, but yeah, you go for it.
So Flutter Away, it's kind of I feel like you would do a better job of explaining what it is. I just kind of got lost in the capybara. That's what I liked about it.
Yes.
But it's kind of in the same vein of like those games where you go and you take pictures and you capture like images of like different wildlife and you build your own little scrapbook and it's all
If any of
very
you played Beasts of Maravilla Island, it's kind of got a lot of very similar vibes to that one.
yeah. Or
like Pokemon Snap without the Pokemon.
Pokemon Snap without the Pokemon. I also kind of got like seasonal Letter to the Future vibes from it because you're just wandering around and capturing what's around you. Only that one's a bit more like it has more of a human touch to it, whereas this is more like a wildlife vibe. But
I was gonna say it'll make you feel like you're out in nature without having to actually go out in nature.
Yeah.
Oh.
So that's a cool one. I only brought that up first because I was pretty much sure as hell.
No, it's because I was specifically looking at July, but yeah, no, I forgot that start of August counts as well.
Cool. Well, the ones that I was personally bringing along, the first one is Symphony, which is a game that came out a couple of years ago, but it's getting a PS5 release, which is it's all I care about, really. So it's like a PS1 grade sort of platformer. It's kind of descaled back in terms of the graphics, but like in terms of the mechanics and stuff, it's still very modern. It works very well, and it's kind of like a science-y based sort of narrative. Beyond that, I don't know an awful lot about it. I just kind of like the look of it. I like how it seems like a competent platformer. And that's all I'm really going for these days at the minute. So Symphony looks like a good one to me. So that was one I was looking at. And on the subject of platformers as well, another one that I had a look at and I was like, oh, that might actually be quite interesting, is a game called Mr. Run and Jump. Mr. Run and Jump is essentially like, it's like a Celeste clone. It's the best way I can put it. But
I love the descriptive title. That's perfect.
Yeah, Mr. Run and Jump. It's kind of got this techno-y vibe to it, where like it's got like that action-heavy beat. You have to move with a flow. I don't know if there's anything more to it than actually just running and jumping, but if there isn't, that'll be okay because it seems like it's like a very competently made like Celeste-esque sort of clone, but it is. I think it's a lot more horizontal in terms of the way it goes about things. I don't think there's a lot of climbing. It's literally just gun it and avoid the obstacles and jump the hurdles and do it in rhythm. So that would be cool. I don't think it's going to like blow my mind, but it looks pretty interesting, and the shapes and the colors got me. And then another one that again I've kind of mentioned it, but it got pushed back by a month, so I'm still waiting, is VR Skater. It got pushed back to the 4th of August. So hopefully that does come out. Been waiting for that for a little while. For those unaware, it is essentially like your typical Tony Hawk's game, but it's from first-person point of view in VR. You're on rails, basically, kind of like Ollie Ollie in a lot of ways, but from the first-person perspective, and you're just doing combos, I imagine, with your hands to kind of flip the board and do all this carry on. So
that's pretty cool.
It sounds fun. And then there's just a couple of other ones I put down, not because I'm necessarily interested in them, but because I think maybe you guys might get a kick out of looking at them and seeing what they are. One of them is, I haven't looked into this too much because I've heard a lot about it, but because it's PC only, I think it might get a Switch release as well. I haven't really looked into it. Bomb Rush Cyberpunk.
I've heard of that one.
Yeah, so a lot of people are quite interested in it.
What genre is it?
Bomb Rush Cyberpunk. I am actually going to look it up alongside you. I put it
Whilst
down.
you're looking it up, I'll because when you said Symphony, it sounded familiar, so I looked it up. I was offered a code for it, but it just looks too old for me. I just don't think I'm going to get enough enjoyment out. I think I'll get frustrated. It looks like the kind of game that have like really random glitches.
I get you.
Like when I was looking at the images, I was like, "There's no way that this is running smoothly."
Oh,
so I remember why I like Bomber Cyberpunk. So it's kind of like your what's that game? Sunset Overdrive. Very very similar.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
In terms of the way that it's going about things, so I feel like it's kind of the spiritual successor to that, and I think it's going to be
this has got the exact same problem that Sable has in that the graphics make me want to die.
The graphics make me want to die.
They're not bad. They just destroy my will to live.
Not that you're dramatic in any way.
It's too desaturated. I need color to survive, Callum.
There's plenty of color in that game, and you know it.
Yeah, but they're muted colors. They're like, I don't know. They should be more vibrant than they are.
I sort of get what you mean. I do. Yeah, that one looks interesting. And then the only other one that I had down there is one that's coming out on the 15th of August. Everyone will kind of know that it's coming. Moving Out 2 is coming out as well.
Oh,
Moving Out was so much fun.
You kind of know what you're getting with that one. It's a very known quantity. It's your
silly.
Overcooks and all of those. It's just a frantic game.
One time I was like playing it and I was trying to move something across the road, and like obviously like the controls in it aren't always consistent, and the car just like kind of yeeted like the thing out of my hand as it drove by, even though it didn't actually touch it. It's like, yo, what's going on? Look where you're going, pal.
Yeah, that I don't know what they're going to do to like improve.
I want to say Team 17 for Moving Out.
Yeah, it is. I don't know what they're going to do to like improve it and make it better than Moving Out to the point where I want the second one. Well, that's it. They made 3. I think they made 3 Overcooks, and like they got somewhat gradually better, but it was pretty much just more of the same. I think they're probably just going to do the same here and make back.
Team 17 as well.
Yeah, it was.
Oh, okay.
They're very good at those kind of like frantic co-op games.
Yes.
That's their thing. Well, at least it was their thing until they started doing all these cool new games this year. Got to give them props. But yeah, that's everything I have on my radar. There's nothing super fancy there, which is sad. But everything, like Stephanie wasn't down on that list 2 weeks ago, and now it is. So things pop up all the time, especially if you're waiting on games from years ago.
I say, Stephanie, I do kind of like the art style where it looks kind of cartoony, like reminiscent of like Hi-Fi Rush and maybe Neon White. I think I haven't played.
I would have
Neon
enjoyed
White,
it
looks like
in 2008, but there's just better stuff.
Yeah,
well, better looking stuff at least these days.
See, I really appreciate a demake. I really do.
I don't.
I get that it's a very niche lane.
Occasionally I do, but it would have to be the right genre. And that for me just looks like it wouldn't work. If it were 2D platformer, I could get behind a demake. 3D platformer, wouldn't touch it with a barge pole.
It's kind of like, do you ever play those old remasters of platformers and they have like a CRT filter?
Oh.
You stick those on. It's never as good, but I put it on anyway.
Well, there's one thing I like when I know it's not an indie, but when you play the remasters of Halo, you can switch to old graphics when you're playing it.
Yeah, I've
You've
noticed
got to
that.
switch between the two. I think that's quite fun. Yeah. But yeah, no, it can be fun to play those old style games. But yeah, sometimes it just doesn't feel like it's the right fit.
Yeah, well, it's a platformer, and I'm going to play it, and that's how that works. Anytime there's one that comes along, I'll buy it, and I'll play it, and I'll get it done. Because it's mindless.
I'm surprised that JT didn't mention, which is Lateberg Legacies, because I thought you mentioned it during the Wholesome Direct thing, and that's coming out in like a week or so. Oh. So basically, you play, you're like you're looking after this village, kind of like in a medieval setting, but instead of like resource management, you're playing like matchmaker with the people in the town. So basically, depending on how well you set the different characters up with each other, depends on the success of your village. So rather than having to like decide how much of one resource to make and like who to sell and how much to sell it for, it's basically just making sure you get the most prosperous matches between the people. And for me, that seems like such a fun like concept for a game. So I'm really looking forward to checking that one out.
Not to be a stickler, but we did mention it 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. Well, but yeah.
Okay.
I thought it'd been like casually mentioned during the Wholesome Direct like summary thing. I didn't know it'd like done a full thing about it. I don't have that kind of memory for it, Callum. Fine, let's pretend it doesn't exist. Pretend it doesn't exist.
It does.
It's coming out.
It deserves a mention. I think it's like tomorrow as far as tomorrow. Yeah.
I know one of the games on my things out tomorrow. And then we've got Sea of Stars. So have you guys heard of that one?
I have heard of Sea of Stars. It looks like it's going to be very, very good.
Yeah, so this is an RPG game with turn-based combat, and one of the things I like about it though is like when you're moving around the world, you kind of like there's sort of multiple of you, and they sort of follow around in a line, and it looks like a much more accessible world than some turn-based combat RPGs are. So instead of having to move like hex tiles or whatever, you can kind of explore in your own vein, and the combat looks pretty decent as well. I don't like when it's overly complicated or underly complicated. Underly's not a word, pretend that's a word. Or underly complicated, but it's kind of like nice striking the balance. The story based on the trailer sounds like it's going to be very interesting. I love the kind of mystical setting of it. It looks very sort of magical and vibrant and natural. Yeah, it should be really, really good. I think that's coming to Switch rather than console, but it might be coming to console as well.
I think it is PC and Switch to start
Yeah,
with.
I think it's PC and Switch.
But yeah, it kind of looks like indie Final Fantasy, pretty much.
No, it does seem really cool, and I'm not usually that first on that kind of pixel graphic style, but I think it does work for the vibe they're going for with the game. So yeah, it's definitely one I want to check out, Sea of Stars. And then the last one on my list for this episode is Venba. Have you guys heard of that one?
No.
I looked at it and didn't think it was that interesting, but tell me why I'm wrong.
So what I like about it, it's not so much the gameplay, it's the story behind it, and I think perhaps why I'm more interested than you are is because it got quite a good mention during one of the Xbox showcases where the developer was sort of talking about like what it means to her, and I love the personal story behind the game. So basically it's her way of connecting with the culture because it's very much based on her own story. So it's a puzzle sort of cooking game, which I like that kind of thing anyway, but it's basically this Indian family who are immigrants in Canada, and it's her own story of her own life, and she never really felt connected to that Indian side of her. So this game is kind of her way of reaching sort of through the generations of her culture to get in touch with Indian cooking, that sort of like the relationship dynamics between like her parents and stuff. And yeah, just basically learning more about the developer's story of why she created the game and the passion that went into it. I'm very excited to explore this because I love when you play a game and you can feel the passion that the creator has for that. And I think this is going to be one of the cases where you see just how much these cultural aspects mean to the developer. And like I'm excited to explore a new culture as well because I don't really know that much about Indian culture, and I'm looking forward to exploring it through the lens of a game. And yeah, it's like I said, it's a puzzle cooking game. It seems like it's going to be relatively simplistic, but it's also got quite a unique graphical style. It's kind of like sort of hand drawn, but not drawn that well. Not drawn badly, but like it's got very much. It's kind of a quirky, sort of charming style to it. And I think it's just going to be a very different experience to a lot of games I play, which is kind of hard to come by these days. There's so many games that are really similar to each other, whereas Venba seems like it's going to be totally unique and bring something different, especially like I said, with the sort of like cultural aspect of it being a really personal project for the creator. So I'm just really excited to see how her vision sort of came to fruition on that one.
Yeah, I get that. I whenever I looked at it, I find it very hard to draw the line in those games because there's some of them that I play and I really enjoy, and there's no real substance in terms of the gameplay to them at all. Like Behind the Frame that I brought up 2 weeks ago, very much in that vein. There's nothing really to it other than a really good narrative that has that personal connection. But whenever I looked at that, I don't know why I drew this line on this one and not the others, but I was like, there's no game there.
Well, I mean, I might play it and hate it, but it's on Game Pass. Well, it's going to be coming to Game Pass on day one, so I'm going to give it a go, and I'll see what I think. I guess we'll have to see next episode what I thought of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, but yeah, I think it could go either way. Like, it could be that the gameplay isn't interesting enough to make it work, but it could be that it exposes me to a kind of game that I wouldn't usually check out. Because, like I said, if I was just looking at this game on the surface of it, I would probably feel like you do, Callum. But I think it's the fact that I saw the full showcase for it during it. It made me more interested. Because I find that even if I'm not interested in something, if I hear someone talking about something they're passionate about, I feel passionate for that thing by sort of hearing about them talking about it. And I love connecting with people like through their passions. I just find it's a really sort of powerful way of like reaching out to other humans. So yeah. I sound so obnoxious just then, but it's true. I just think I just love seeing people passionate about stuff. I don't care what the stuff is. If there's passion there, I just love hearing them talk about it.
No, that makes sense. I felt that same way when I was like listening to the stuff at Day of the Devs. There were some of them where I was looking at and I was like, if you weren't telling me this, I would not care.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, I think it's really cool.
I get it.
We can see their passion just really bleed into their game like that. And I also love. I think I harp about the visuals being like Night in the Woods a lot, but this really looked like that, where it's like it was very that kind of paper mache style of visuals but instead of all the people being like animals, like cats and alligators, they're just regular people. So it's like, part of me's like, wait, why aren't you a cat or a
Why aren't you a
bear.
cat?
I ask that to people all the time.
I wonder what the
But yeah.
responses are.
They're not good enough unless they turn into a cat there and then.
I mean, I can get behind that. Cats are generally better than people.
They're good boys and girls. But yeah, that is our games on our radar, boys and girls and people. We are going to be back in just a moment, and we will be doing our third and final section on indie games, small indies, big topics. Find out more about what I'm talking about in a minute. Hello once again for the third and final section of the 7th episode of Indie Game Culture. We're really getting up there. We are going to be talking about small indies, big message. The topic of today is basically chatting about how little games cover these big topics, these taboo areas, these really emotive topics on the horizon, or topics on our mind, and try and work out why they're so amazing at doing so and why AAAs can't really do it quite as well. Probably want to kick off with just discussing why you think indies are better at it. Who wants to jump in?
I mean, I'm happy to go for it, and I think it's because they're able to have the space to do it, because with AAAs, with a budget that big, they can't take too many risks, and going for the like really deep topics is not going to appeal to everyone, and it could like end up having like a backlash. And when they're putting like millions and millions of pounds in it, they cannot afford for it to get like negative feedback or for it to like alienate some of the player base. Whereas with indies, they can commit to a niche and say, okay, we're actively targeting people looking for people that want to address this issue, and they can actually grow quite big specifically within their niche. So one game I'm definitely going to bring up is Spiritfarer, which is so powerful in terms of the emotions that it brings. Like, it's got decent gameplay, but you do not play Spiritfarer for the gameplay. You play it for the characters you meet on your journey. So for those of you who don't know Spiritfarer, basically you play as a character called Stella who meets these spirits, and you basically invite them onto your ship and you prepare them to move on to the afterlife, and you have to do quests that basically help them come to terms with events that happen throughout their lives so that they feel ready to pass through the Everdor, which will take them on to whatever's next. And it's kind of like a big unknown. They don't know what's next, so their spirits are kind of trapped on this plane. They're not ready to move on, and you prepare them, and you meet, like, I think there's 13 characters in total since the both the DLCs, and there's just, each character is so different, and there's so much detail that goes into creating these stories. And like, I cannot think of another game that has made me cry so much. Like, they have such powerful stories. Like, even you get to know them because they're on your boat for quite a while as you're completing the quest, so you really get to know and love these characters, and then you have to essentially take them to their death. Like, they're already dead when you meet them, you know that it's coming. And yet that final boat trip, because every time you take them, it's not just, okay, you're at the door, bye now. You go on a boat trip where it's just you and that character, and they'll give you like a sort of final speech about their life and what they're taking away from it. And I was bawling like an absolute baby. Especially, there's this one character called Stanley, and Stanley was a child when he died. So basically, I'm not going to give any spoilers, but having to take Stanley to the afterlife is like one of the most heartbreaking things I've ever had to do, especially because you learn about how troubled his life was. And yeah, like, I love Stanley more than pretty much any other character in any other video game. He's so wholesome, and I adore him. And the connections you make with the characters in Spiritfarer are nothing like anything I felt in another game, because they're not afraid to go deep. They will really tap into like emotional issues, like, you know, cancer, or like other sort of diseases, or grief, or depression, or dementia. Like, there's one character called Alice, and when you meet her, she sort of slowly goes through dementia and loses more and more of her personality and her memories. Like, she starts out so sweet and so lovely, and she gets to a point where she's snapping at you, getting really angry, getting really aggressive. And like, that one really broke me, because I experienced that with my own grandfather, and I was like, I was watching that happen with a character, and it reminded me of my own experience. And I think that's what Spiritfarer does so well. It's like, you may connect to certain characters because you've experienced something similar to that in your own life. And I just don't think AAAs have the space to really get into the depth of that, because they've got to create such big games to justify the like really high £60 prices on them. Whereas with indies, they can price themselves lower and just really target the niche. And yeah, it's just, Spiritfarer is absolutely one that I would recommend it, as long as you're in a mental health space to experience that, because it could be very triggering. But if for me, I actually found it was the opposite. It was much needed closure. It helped me deal with my own mental health battles I was having at the time. Like, I was able to explore them through a sort of safe environment of a game, rather than having to face my own issues. And I think being able to imprint what you're feeling. Like, I was experiencing very deep grief at the time, and being able to channel that through the medium of a game was so powerful, and not something I'd ever experienced in a game before. So yeah, I really, really like it. And I think there's other issues they can do it with as well. So for example, I know I talk about bug snacks a lot, and it's one of the things it does very well, probably better than any game I've seen, is LGBTQ plus representation. I think with the big games, they either avoid it entirely because they don't want to backlash, or they shoehorn it in so obviously, so deliberately. That's like, you've literally just put this here to appease people. Whereas with bug snacks, it's done so casually and so like interwoven to the story of the game. It's not like, look at us, we're being diverse. It's like, this is our story, these characters just happen to be part of the community. Like, I didn't even realize that Floofty was non-binary until I played it the second time, and I realized all the characters were using they to describe them, and like there's sort of gay relationships and stuff, and it's done so smoothly that you don't really notice it happening. And I think that's another place where indies don't have to worry about getting major backlash from like millions of fans for either including or not including stuff like that, because they're targeting a smaller fan base. And I this could be kind of biased of me, but I find that indie players are a lot more open to diverse topics, whereas a lot of AAA players will have sort of very set mindsets and what they expect from their games. Whereas with indie players, they're playing so many different genres a lot of the time that they're sort of open to different ideas. And I think that's why indie games can afford to sort of go deeper on those issues.
Well, that's why I find it so weird that AAA is trying to approach it that way, and they do the whole shoehorning thing where like there's an Apex Legends character that's maybe in there for like 3 years, and then all of a sudden at Pride Month they go, oh, by the way, they've been gay the whole time. Did you not know? Happy Pride Month.
It's like Soldier 76 with Overwatch, right? That they didn't announce it until like a good couple of years after the game was released, if I'm correct.
Yeah, it's the same kind of thing that like J.K. Rowling does with her characters and kind of invents something after.
Yeah, Dumbledore was gay everywhere except the books and the films.
Yeah, it's that sort of thing, and they just do that as a marketing thing, and it tends to be around Pride Month pretty much all the time. It's a very nefarious thing. I'm not a big fan of it, but there are some games that do a really good job. I was going to say, first of all, like the reason I think that indie games do it better is because there are so many corporate heads involved in the AAA process that they kind of look at all of these risks, as you would say, as non-marketable things. Like, even if you look at the big AAA emotive games, like everyone will probably just say The Last of Us is that. The Last of Us is a very Hollywood friendly, very shooty bang bang sort of game, and there is emotive stuff there, but it's all done in a very formulaic movie kind of setting, and they even had more room than usual because Naughty Dog at that time were just making a game because they were trying to just fill a space. They put a couple of developers on that. It wasn't meant to blow up like it did, and it just happened to do so. So they had a lot more room to wiggle in than most people would in that space. But yeah, that tends to be the AAA example, and it's a very formulaic Hollywood sort of style. But AAA, it's very much high level of passion and personality in the projects, and like that bleeds through pretty much every time because it's usually related to the developer and their personal like struggles or issues or whatever it happens to be they want to project onto the game. And like the reason why I kind of struggle to relate to these games in terms of their big issues is because I've had a very easy life, in all honesty. And ultimately, the reason why these things hit you in a certain way is because you relate to them in a certain way. And there's some of them where I can look at them from the outside looking in and go, I get why that is really, really heartwarming or touching or emotive, but I'm like, I don't have that personal connection to it, but the developer clearly does, and that's one thing that always shines through. So I wrote down a few, and they kind of vary in terms of how emotive or how like touching or how taboo the topic is. The one that I bring up because like this is an LGBT one that's done so seamlessly as well. Now, the big thing about Celeste is the one I'm talking about. The big thing it covers is mental health, and the whole thing is like you're climbing the mountain. That is your mental health. You've got your pseudo character battling essentially the bad version of yourself. But then there is also the LGBT aspect of it, because I'm fairly certain that Madeline is a trans character, and that's not really
I don't know that much about Celeste, to be honest, but I knew it was about mental health. I didn't know it had that awareness of it.
Yeah, so it has that kind of layer to it. It's something I had to kind of look into because I'd seen a couple of news articles and I was like, oh, is that actually a thing? But then whenever you look at it and you go, oh yeah, well, it obviously was. It's not an after the fact sort of thing. And they've done that very well. But the one that I always bring up, and it's the one that it's like an old kind of like £4 game you can buy, and it's very accessible in that regard. It's called When the Past Was Around. I kind of champion it quite a lot. It's a game that was touching mainly because it deals with like grief and letting go and just all those typical things, but it does it in a really cool way. Like there's no dialogue in this game. It basically tells the story through music and art. Now, the story is essentially like a girl that's alone and she's trying to work through the process of being alone and has these flashbacks to like her lover and their time they spent together. And it tells the story through music. And the only bit of music that is used throughout is like this one violin riff. And it's like it repeats, but it repeats in different tones and different. It's you need to listen to the soundtrack of it.
It looks very beautiful, like looking at the screenshots of it. So I'm intrigued to hear sort of the music, how they do it.
Yeah, it's sublime. Like it is essentially just one thing repeating over and over and over again, but it is an absolutely astounding soundtrack.
Music can be really powerful at evoking emotions. Yeah. Actually, like that's one of the things with Spiritfarer. Like if I so much as hear the tune from it, I'm immediately back in that mindset.
Yeah, and that's why I think The Past Was Around is really good. But it's also a really good story about like grief, letting go, and understanding those feelings. And I would kind of say, Behind the Frame that I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, that's kind of similar. It's different because it's not dealing with grief. It's to deal with like adult relationships and how sometimes they break down, even with your best interest at heart and all that. So it tells another emotive story. But again, the gameplay is not king there. It's very much everything that's happening on the screen.
What's the gameplay in like When the Past Was Around like?
Very much similar. It's just point and click.
Okay.
And you solve puzzles, and it's all quite rudimentary, but it's not about that. It's just kind of a vehicle to drive forward.
It looks like it might be something worth checking out, to be honest. I like games that delve into that kind of like closure aspect of it.
Yeah, I think you would really, really enjoy it. It's one that it was like a sleeper one. I bought it because I knew it had a very easy platinum and it was quite cheap. But then it hit me, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, I did not expect that."
I mean, I'm not usually about narrative adventures, but I will change my mind if it can make me cry. I like a game that makes me cry.
I feel like that one could maybe get you. It can be a little bit abstract at times in the sense that you kind of maybe struggle to figure out what's going on, but by the time you get the end of it, you're like, "Oh, I get it now." It's not just like a surreal sort of thing where there's an owl talking to me. Like it's just an artistic choice.
Yeah.
Then there are
symbolism.
Yeah. Then there were other ones. Another one that's like I feel like it kind of championed like the LGBT kind of indie scene, and that was Gone Home. Gone Home was probably the first game that I can remember that had like an LGBT sort of theme throughout the game. Obviously, it's very much tied to the ending of the game, so I don't want to spoil it too much because it's very much a spoiler if I do so. But it is a very good game. It tells a lot of really intricate stories anyway, but then there's that one at the end that champions that. And at a time where people were kind of a bit touchy about doing it at all, because it was like, if I do that, then does that make that my game non-marketable? And indie games were almost nearly not a thing back then. That was 2008, 2009. Indie games were just kind of kicking off. So it was a brave choice and one that paid off really well for them. Another one that I wrote down was, I feel like people have probably played these ones because they are so old, but another one is Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, which is
I've heard of that one.
It's such a sad opening from what I know.
Yeah, so it's one that kind of pops up in listicles all the time. So it's one where you
yeah, I played that one, some of it, and then I think it got like removed from Game Pass or something.
Yeah, it essentially you control two brothers, and they essentially are represented by the two analog sticks, and your role is to go and get medicine from the top of a mountain or a faraway village for your like ill father. And I think that's the story as far as I can remember. It's a long time ago I played it, but essentially you get used to using the twin analogs and used to kind of using him to get you there or whatever, and then like spoilers, but it's a very old game, sorry. Basically the other one passes away and then you have to complete the rest of the game with just one analog stick.
No!
That's essentially how it hits you. Like you have the muscle memory, but you're like, oh, but the other one does nothing.
It's sad.
It's very, very touching, very, very well handled from a mechanical sense as well.
Spoiled it.
Yeah, I did.
I mean, that's a great way to make you feel like you just feel so you've lost a part of yourself from that. It's like, oh, I can't do this thing anymore.
I feel like it would still hit even if you were playing it, because I feel like I've not done it injustice in any sort of way. But that's the mechanical aspect to it that makes it like there's a physical sense of there's something missing there, which is something I've never had in any
It
other game.
reminds me of how this isn't really a spoiler in A Plague Tale Requiem. Sort of you play as the older sister with your younger brother Hugo, and he can like sneak through small gaps and stuff. So you kind of and like you sort of do things for him, like helping him over walls and things. And at one point he gets kidnapped, and so you have to sort of go without him like that. It sort of reminds me of that in a sense.
Mm.
You kind of just get used to having them around.
Definitely more touching than that game. Definitely.
Have you played the second one, A Plague Tale?
I reviewed A Plague Tale Requiem.
Yeah,
it was
Requiem
okay.
really hit me.
Fair enough. I thought it was okay. It was definitely better than the first one.
Yeah, it was the ending for Requiem I thought was really, really clever.
And then another one that's probably quite prevalent now more than ever. I wrote down This War of Mine as well, which is a really harrowing game. Essentially, it's about like it's supposed to be a non-distinct European civil war where you play as the civilian or the group of civilians. It's a survival management game where you essentially try and just survive in wartime. And obviously, with the whole thing in Ukraine going on, it became even more prevalent because it has like it has certain parallels to it, and the stories that it tells, like it mainly does the thing where you get used to your companions, you build them up, you give them all of these things, kind of like leveling up a character in an RPG, and then they die off. Same sort of thing. If you don't take care of them or something happens that most of the time it tends to be completely out of your hands, like there just isn't food to feed them, you have no means of getting it. If you try to, you'll probably end up killing more people than just letting them die. So then they just end up dying. And like there's so many of these like harrowing stories that are just created through natural play, and then there are ones that are actually there and tend to be a bit more scripted, and they're just as bad, you know.
Yeah.
So that's another one that really hits you. And then
I remember
there's a couple
this war mine, so I say like just I remember stealing food from like an old family. Like there's these two old people in their house, and you just went in and stole their stuff, and they couldn't fight you or anything. They just said like, "Why are you taking our food?" I just felt awful. And then you come back later, and they've both died. And
it's really tough when you have to make choices like that in games.
And there's not really a good choice that you can make in that game. Every single one of them is like, there will be a bad consequence to this. You might survive another day, but there'll be a consequence. Yeah, so that one, like, it's an amazing game, like mechanically in terms of survival mechanics. Like, there's not very much like it, and it just got a like definitive remaster last year. So, or maybe it was the start of this year. Can't remember, but yeah, it's one you should definitely play. And there's a couple of other ones I wrote down as well. I won't go into super detail on them, but like I wrote down Journey, and it's
you
one.
talk about that one quite often.
Yeah, it's one that it's very much up to your own interpretation what you take away from it, because essentially the story is very abstract, it's very artistic, but the thing represents kind of the circle of life and kind of reincarnation, and like you start at the bottom of your journey, you get to the end of your journey. It represents aging, dying, rebirth, all that sort of stuff. You can read into that if you want, and it is quite a deep, profound topic, or it can just be a really stylized game where you play as a little dude in a scarf, whatever way you want to play it. But I think that one's very cool if you want to look at it from that profound sort of lens. And the other one is, I don't know if you would call this an indie, but Senua's Sacrifice, Hellblade.
Yeah, I haven't played that, but Matt played that, and I watched some of that.
It's one that kind of highlights mental illness and specifically schizophrenia, and it does it in such a incredibly like visual and like visceral way where you can it really represents what these people go through, because it's not something that is covered a lot in like mainstream like culture. Like if you said to someone, how does a schizophrenic's mind work and how do they go from day to day, you couldn't really describe it, because it is something that just, because of the like narrative of years and years ago where they were just put in like the loony bin and no one really chatted about the kind of intricacies of it. it showcases all of those intricacies and showcases just like how difficult it would be to have that going on in your head, and like the paranoia and the voices and all of that. Like, it's so well done. And it's a very tough topic to cover, so I thought that was definitely worth a mention as well. But yeah, they're the ones that I wrote down. And I was also just going to mention as well, and I don't know if this comes across as harsh, right? But there's one thing I don't like whenever a game is the message. I don't like when a game is just the message and there isn't a game that coincides with it, and it almost serves like a public service announcement where they're like, I want to put this out, almost like it was like an eco warrior like slapping a burger out of someone's hand or something, saying meat is murder and all that. Like, okay, but get away from me at the same time, you know. And that's me speaking as a vegetarian. So, but there's a couple of games that I wrote down. I was struggling to like think of ones off the top of my head. The two that sprung to my mind, one was Sea of Solitude, which I thought was...
I remember seeing the trailers for that before that was announced. That did seem like it was quite powerful.
Yeah, but...
Was it? Like I said, I've never actually played it. I've only heard the developer talk about it, so I don't know if it actually came across what the developer was going for in the actual game.
Oh, it does come across what they were going for. I don't think it necessarily lands, and I think that because the gameplay is quite weak, it really struggles to...
That's why I didn't play it. It didn't look like the gameplay was going to be interesting enough.
Yeah, well, that's the main issue. That I think that the message was more important than making a game that would actually do quite well, and that's an issue I have. And another one, and I think this one is harsher because it's the one called That Dragon Cancer, if you've ever heard of that before, and it is effectively a story game.
That Dragon Cancer?
Yeah, it's effectively a story game that just tells the process of, I think it's a dad going through cancer with a child. And just
they use the isometric art style.
Yeah.
I would not have the patience for that.
Does the child have cancer or just the dad?
I can't remember. I cannot remember. But essentially, the problem I have with that is it's not really a game as much as it is a story. And I think to myself, yes, it's important that it exists, but at the same time, who is it for? Who is it for? I don't get it.
Yeah, I do find that sometimes with games, it's like you wanted to make a short film realistically, and you've just done it as a game for some peculiar reason.
That's how that comes across to me, and it's just not the right medium for it. Like, that would have been a good like independent film. It doesn't work as a game.
No, I'm very much with you on that. I realized there was a couple of games I neglected to talk about in my section. So one I reviewed for Indie Game Culture, and I gave it a very high rating, and you came back to me, you're like, are you sure you want to give it this? And that's Iris and the Giant. And it's really powerful. It's one of the best games I've seen for representing how like mental health and depression can almost feel like battles you're fighting within yourself. So it's like a card-based turn-based combat game, but you're fighting different sort of demons that pop up, but they each represent different kinds of mental health, like anxiety or doubt or like fear or depression, that basically, and you get cutscenes that sort of show why your character's feeling like this. So you're playing as a young girl who's being bullied really badly in school, and the whole game, the premise is you're fighting these battles because you need to enter a I think it's either swimming or diving competition, and you're trying to get up the courage to actually go and do it. And so the whole game is basically you fighting that inner battle to be able to feel motivated and powerful enough, and all of your attacks are kind of like different ways of dealing with things. And then towards the end of the game, you get access to a new card, which is just no, and it's basically you refusing to accept all your doubt and your anxiety and your depression is saying to you, and you just fight them. And I'm not going to give spoilers as to how you beat the final boss, but the way you beat them is so clever. And like, it took me about half an hour of playing, because they regenerate a lot of the time, so it took me about half an hour of trying to defeat this boss before I tried something new that I wouldn't have considered, and that worked. And it was such a clever way of exploring I'm not, like I said, I won't give spoilers, but like exploring how depression can manifest within you and how the best ways to fight that within yourself. And it was just so beautifully done. And I love games that like really get into the experience of how it is to feel it for yourself rather than viewing it from the outside in. I think the fact that you're having a battle within your own mind, you're not just seeing her being bullied or like running away from the bullies, you're running away from your own doubts that have become of this bullying. And I'll also mention Gylt, because I played it very recently. It's very clever in the way it shows just how much of an effect bullying can have, and I think that is something that I'm very glad to see is being explored more nowadays, because I think it's very neglected just how much of an emotional effect bullying can have. Like, everyone always says it's awful, but it looks at it from like the outside perspective of other people are bullying you. It doesn't look at the effect it can have on how, after being bullied by so many other people, you start bullying yourself almost in the way that you view yourself. And I think I love it when games show how at the end of the day you are the one who is creating this sort of trap for yourself in your own mind because of your experiences. And I love it when games give you the chance to fight through that, like I said, through the medium of the game, to sort of prepare yourself for those kind of battles in real life. And I think it's just really beautifully done.
On the subject of that, I would
really
also say that Concrete Genie is exactly the same in that regard for the bullying thing, in the sense that it showcases you getting that treatment, but then it gives the backstory on how the bully became to be and how they've been treated, and like it's an interesting.
I love that kind of. I haven't played a game like that, but I love that kind of thing in TV shows where it shows the bully's backstory as well. Because I think it's just very powerful, like how everything is kind of interconnected and how the knock-on effects of things. And then on a different vibe, so the ones we've been talking kind of like more intensely emotional, and this is one game I haven't played and I never would play, but it's The Longing. And I don't know if you guys have heard of this one, but basically it's played over the course of 400 real days. So you start the game and you are waiting for this, I think it's like a king who's like needs to wake up and is going to wake up in 400 days time, and you're his servant and you're like just basically getting ready for his arrival. And you can either just like start the game, wait 400 days and pick it up, or you can play the game and like explore the world you're in and like do sort of very menial tasks. And I think I like the way it sort of looks at patience, and like, because the endings you get are different depending on the activities you do within the game and how you pass your time, how regularly you log on. And I think it's just a very clever way of looking at the fact that we are all very impatient in general in real life. We like things now. And I think the fact that The Longing forces you to wait. Like I said, I hate it. I would never play it. I think it's a horrible idea for a game.
Like, I feel
but
you
I think
with that.
I'm also glad that it exists. I think it's quite a clever concept that shines. I think it kind of shines light on society, on like how we are kind of living in a very consumerist society of we need stuff to be happening all the time now. We can't wait for things. We can't deal with downtime. We can't have less. We always want more. And I think I do like the fact that The Longing gives you different endings depending on how well you deal with that downtime.
Yeah, I just got so bored playing it that I was like, I can't.
Oh, you actually played it?
I did. I played it for several hours.
I've seen like clips of it and stuff, but I do not have the patience to play it.
Yeah, I tried doing the thing where like, okay, I'll set this character to task and I'll walk away and I'll come back, and then I was completely lost because I'd forgotten what I was doing, or like I'd say like, okay, just wander to a different spot, and then they were just like the very end of the map, and I was like, oh, how do I get home?
Have you finished it yet?
Oh no, I returned it. It just wasn't for me. Or a friend of mine really liked it, and she said like, "Oh yeah, it had a good ending." And there's things you can do to actually speed up like the way the time is flowing in the game, so you can like finish it within like a month or two. But
okay, I didn't know you could do that. I thought you had to actually wait the 400 days.
But yeah, I just again, it's as you said, like we're all very consumerist and impatient, and I wasn't patient enough to wait to enjoy
no,
it.
I wouldn't be either.
But yeah, it was very
JT,
good.
what are the ones that you would say are the big messages that you resonate with?
Well, going aside from all of the touching, heartwarming messages, I would say that indie games do a really good job of veering into the realm of psychological horror to tell stories about trauma, abuse, addiction, and other nasty things that really affect the characters in the story. And I guess, okay, I've already talked about it a bit, but Lisa the Painful, that game is actually a 3-parter, and the first game in the series, Lisa the First, it's a free game that you can just try out on your own, and I don't know if I'd recommend it because it's very hard and horrifying, but the game focuses around a young girl who's trying to escape from her abusive father, but as she leaves, every character in the story is replaced with that of her father, and some are like different versions. And it's like just showing how like unescapable trauma can be. And the very end of the game, you get a VHS with final message from your mom. But like just as you're coming closer, like your mom is her head is shrouded in her hair. And as you get closer, then it's revealed to be her father's head. So it's just this final gut punch. It's like, oh, she can't escape it. And then it's really awful. And then you start the second game, and that girl has taken her life, and just they show her hanging, and it's like, oh god, this is awful. And so you have that lead in, and the story of Lisa the Painful, it's great because I've described it as like it's very vulgar and perverted, but it's very lighthearted and fun. But at the same time, as you're going through this like kind of fun, wacky world, your character is dealing with these awful personal problems, and that just keeps cropping up within the game, where like they're visited by addiction or like traumatic incidents with their family, and just like like Callum, I've had a pretty easy life, so I can't personally relate to it, but I think just showing how unsettling these events can be for a character in the game can kind of give you an impression of like, okay, so this is what someone could be dealing with, like just showing how like awful and escapable, or just like something is just really keeps cropping up for this character, and just showing how difficult their life can be through this. And I think it did such a good job showing how, like, despite no matter how nice or fun the world got, that character was never a part of that world because they were so taken out of it by this. And then they go to show on like his daughter how she's in the third game, and then because of her upbringing by her father who had all these problems, like it just showed how like secular it could get, where it's like it never, like all these problems like just flow into the next generation because each person keeps dealing with it. And it's really sad and upsetting just to see how like there wasn't really a good ending for these characters because they were very much trapped by what happened to them in the past. And I think that was very gutsy, and a lot of AAAs like won't have the courage to do a bad ending. So I think really being able to show like, okay, this didn't work out for these characters because of what happened to them, and that's okay because sometimes there isn't really a good solution to this, or if there is, saying like, hey, maybe it is good to like seek mental health and take care of yourself. So I really appreciate it from that story. And another story, like there's a lot of other good indie games that deal with really traumatic events, like the fallout of someone taking their life. And I think it's I don't know, it's like Amore, that's most of the game just falling out the consequence of a group of friends, and it's 4 years later after in the game, from what we know, characters taking their own life, and just dealing with this consequences of this friend group that's had this falling out over it, and how they're slowly able to build their way back together. And I think it's really sweet. And also it has, like, there are different messages about social isolation and coming to terms with friends that like you've had a falling out with, and like the game ends on this very powerful message of just like accepting yourself. And I think it's right that the game doesn't have to be just that message. Like it's a fun game and it's very colorful and cool, but having that like be the gut punch or like the final thing to end it with just like leaves you walking away from it feeling very good. But again, it's very like tough subjects to talk about, because I know like once a game goes into that, it's like, oh, this is too unsettling, I don't want to play a game like this. And you have to really force yourself to go through some like horror sections to enjoy it. So yeah, I guess I don't know, that Lisa franchise, that did a really good job dealing with those tough subjects. And Amore, because that's the best horror game I've ever played, just because I believe that stuff happened to somebody. Like in reality, it's so plausible and so horrible. And yeah, I guess that's just more going to the realm of just like really difficult subjects to talk about. And then you can also talk about, I won't talk about too much because I talk about it every time, but Disco Elysium, it really gets to veer into a lot of political satire and saying how every single political ideology has failed the city of Martinez from and like maybe it doesn't have a solution to how to help these people. And maybe that's okay, or just, I don't know, it's very unabashed and it's not afraid to talk about these things and not afraid to take these risks. So yeah, I think those are 3 games that really sold it for me, for just like how courageous these games can be and like what they're able to do.
Well, I do like your point of view that not everything has to be uplifting. It can be a bad ending, and that's okay because it teaches you something, or it shows you the reality of something.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd say kind of Norco kind of does that in a way as well, in the sense that it tells like that true to life story of this town that's just getting constantly oppressed by the oil company. And obviously it gets more surreal as time goes on, to the point where you're like, okay, I can kind of disengage from that. But the opening half of the game, I would say, is very much, well, this is quite dark and just a bit depressing in a wonderful way.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. But like, that's the same thing with Disco Elysium, where like it is constantly funny. It's constantly engaging. It has incredible writing, but it's also not afraid to go, yeah, the situation is terrible and it's just going to stay terrible, and there's nothing you can really realistically do about it. It's just the way it is. But that's world building. It's relatable. It's believable. The world is bad sometimes.
Yeah. And I don't know,
There's plenty of indie games that will tell you otherwise, and that's where they come in, and they give you the bright colors and the shiny things.
I need my heartwarming conclusion after those sad, depressing bits, but I appreciate those sad, depressing bits. It's good to feel sad or really think about something that someone else is going through. It's I think it's good.
Did you have a wee cry every now and again?
Oh yeah.
It is. It's very cathartic. Sometimes you need to get it out of your system, and like gaming is a nice, safe way to do it rather than reflecting on your own life.
I don't know if I'm super keen on the whole crying as your game thing. I don't think it's ever actually happened to me. I don't know if it's because of the interactive aspect, or maybe it's just because I don't cry at things very often. The only thing that I can remember that gets me every time is Marley and Me, because I'm not a psycho.
Oh.
I've never actually seen Marley and Me. I know what happens, obviously.
Yeah, well,
I'm live.
It hurts.
Yeah.
Keep rewatching, thinking like, oh, maybe the dog will be okay. But
When I was a kid, I used to have like a trick. If I ever needed to like force myself to cry, I'd think about the scene in the Jungle Book where we think Baloo is dead, because that always got me as a kid. Even though I knew he wasn't really dead, when it was Mowgli, like, please be okay, Baloo. I'm like, yeah, please be okay, Baloo. So like anytime I needed to cry for like a school play or something, I was like start playing that scene in my head. I'm like, oh my god, poor Baloo.
Oh my gosh.
That's a pro actor right there.
I could never force myself to cry. Like I remember in a science
I'm a very
class.
convincing fake crier. After the podcast is, I'll show you.
Oh man.
That's for the Patreon when that comes along.
I know it's hard. It has to be a spur of the moment. Like I'm feeling that moment, like just how sad these characters' lives are, like what they're going through, or it just has to be a very touching conclusion. I can't force myself to be sad. It has to be very like organic, I think.
I was also going to bring up a couple of little small ones, because there's a couple of games that I think that I wouldn't put them in the same bracket as big issues, but they do some really fun, subtle things that tell a really interesting story, or subtly like seamlessly slide something in that's so tastefully done. Coffee Talk is one of them that deals with race.
I do like Coffee Talk.
Coffee Talk just deals with race in like a really like throwaway way, just like, yeah, well, that's the way it is here, and we just get on and it's all fine. It's just a really refreshing way to look at it, but it's never actually the subject of the game in any shape or form.
Yeah, it's kind of like a background situation.
Right.
Yeah. It's quite a refreshing thing, but it still has those like kind of problems that we would have in the real world, but just in
like for example with Lua and Bailey, like where she's a succubus and he's an elf, and his parents don't approve of her, and like
it still has that going on. It's an interesting way to look at it. And then another one that I was going to bring up is Unpacking as well, and it tells us it is also.
I did not have the patience for Unpacking.
I'm really
I heard
surprised.
it was a really quick game, and I was like, oh, it's just too moving stuff from one place to another. And
I thought you'd really get a kick out of
I
that.
thought I would, but I got bored of it. I got annoyed at it telling me that that's not where things go. I'm like, that is exactly where I'd put it. Let me put it there, please.
Fair.
I didn't like its rigid suggestions of where things belong.
Sometimes the rigid suggestions lead to very interesting realizations about the characters. Like, for example, there is about halfway through the game where you move in with like your first boyfriend after college, and you're putting all the stuff from like your college dorms and stuff into his apartment and try and make things fit. And it kind of, because it is an LGBTQ representative game as well, because you end up with a lesbian partner at the end of the game. It's not like a primary focus, but it's kind of like the end slide showcases that. But you obviously were with a boy back in the day, and he's clearly like from his apartment a gym bro, one of those kind of people, and it forces you to put certain things in certain places, and one of them is like your college diploma, and it forces you to slip it under the wardrobe, kind of out of the way where no one can see it. And it tells the story of how like they don't appreciate you, they're an asshole, like you shouldn't be with them. But that's incredible storytelling.
That is clever, I'll give it.
Yeah, that's why the rigidity is okay to an extent.
I was looking at that cute game, and I was like, I love these adorable pictures and stuff. It seems like a sweet game. I couldn't imagine. It's like, oh, it says some good messages, or has some pretty like, oh, well, that was a powerful message there.
Yeah, but it's all really subtle. It's basically a game, if you'd want to look at it, a game about belonging and finding your place, and that is essentially what it represents. It's like a time capsule showing you as like this kid with just a load of crap, and you just gradually build up all this stuff that has meaning and sentiment to you, and it's very, very nice. It's very quick, and I also really enjoy, well, I didn't enjoy it because it made me feel a bit old, but whenever the game came out, and everyone was putting a certain item in the kitchen and going, what is this? Why does it not belong there? It was a GameCube. No one knew what it was.
Oh, no.
Oh,
Yeah, so that was sad.
I never had a GameCube myself, but my friend did, and I was always so happy when I got to go around their house and play with it.
I always thought it was
Well-
the coolest thing. I was like, what is this strange contraption whenever I'd visit as a little kid? And I was like, oh, so it's just... Then it became dated, and I was like, oh.
Well,
Wow.
them Gen Z folks, they would have it in the kitchen like a toaster
Yeah.
because they just don't know.
They don't even have like cassettes and stuff. It's crazy.
I've
I find it
never-
mad that people wouldn't know what a cassette player is.
I know, it's insane.
I
My
know what
nan
it is, but
didn't, which
I
is
don't
what I
know how
found
to use
really
it.
weird.
I've never seen a cassette player in my life. Like, in reality, it's just... Sorry if that's
No,
triggering.
Get out of here, Jake. Done.
Out of a fear of perhaps talking about cassette based again, I think we need to wrap up. Because I just see
I
it
very
coming.
nearly did bring it
Oh.
up to this, so you're lucky.
But yeah, I think we have very much covered the big issues and
say.
the small indies. The only thing I was just going to ask just before we finish this up is there any AAA games that you think have that same level of representation of the big topics, like at all?
It depends. Like, so technically, Psychonauts 2 is an indie, but let's face it, it's essentially got the budget of a much bigger game. So Psychonauts 2 does it very well, but like I said, it's not technically a AAA. It's in that weird in-betweeny spot. But like, just thinking specifically of AAAs, there's nothing that comes to mind for me.
Yeah, fortunately, same for me. Like, even just like horror stuff, I feel like most horror in AAA scene tends to be a little bit more escapist and not very relatable to people's lives for the most part. So nothing for that. And I can't think of anything that's like, oh, it touched on this really tough topic on AAA.
I think we hit the nail on the head when we said it's just like they can't take those risks.
Yeah. There's only two that I can really think of. One of them was Silent Hill 2. I think that's incredible psychological horror, and it's grounded in reality to an extent where you can go, that's actually very relatable. It's very good. And then the only other game, and I put like an asterisk beside this because sometimes they handle things very poorly. And if you go back through the series, even more so. The Persona series does a good job of highlighting like bigger topics.
I know.
What are some of those topics in the games? Because I can't wrap my head around it.
So it goes into like the take Persona 5, for example. The first palace is about a teacher who is essentially like a bit like touchy-feely and shouldn't be, and he's one of those, and that's one of the big topics they cover like right out the bat in that game. But obviously it has this kind of like Japanese anime sort of like, oh, a girl in the bathroom sort of vibe to it.
Oh.
So like it also has that, so you kind of have to kind of weigh it up, but sometimes it does do it quite well.
All right.
So, yeah, they were the only two that I could really think of. Everything else still has that like Hollywood filter to it. Like you could say things like Spec Ops: The Line and stuff as well, but I still think that's very much, you've seen it all before. It seems like it's kind of like Black Hawk Down and all that stuff that kind of just plays on the whole war and patriotism and Hollywood blockbuster sort of vibe.
I mean, to be fair, that game actually, I can't believe I'm forgetting about that, but it does a pretty good job, like talking about PTSD and stuff.
It does. It does.
But yeah, it is very formulaic in that sense.
That's what I mean. Like it does some things good, but then it does come with that like other side to it. It's not 100% what you would want it to be, like to deliver a message. It's still very much your boots on the ground Call of Duty mindless shooter sort of thing. So it is what it is. But that is everything for today. We've talked at length, as we tend to do. We will be back again for another episode. In 2 weeks' time, we'll bring you some new games we've been playing on the radar, and we will come up with a brand new topic. I will say it once again, we have a website. We have websites with reviews, we have guides, we have everything that you could possibly ever want. We have a newsletter. Sign up for it, and I will deliver that personally to your email. I will hand deliver it. I will take it in my hands and I will deliver it, or maybe fly it like a little carrier pigeon. I don't know. And we also have socials where I do TikToks occasionally and some other stuff. We have YouTube as well where we do video content. And lastly, tell your friends. Please tell your friends. But yeah, that is everything from us. Thank you very much, and we will see you again. Goodbye.
Bye.
See you around.